5th. This is the regular meeting of the Town of Nags Head Board of Commissioners. I'd like to welcome everybody. We're going to start with a moment of silent meditation. Amen. If you'll join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're always pleased to welcome our lifeguards for the meeting in June, and I think they are ready to come on stage here.
I always feel like we should have music when we bring them in.
Awful circumstance.
Like sort of on the wagon. I said we should bring music.
Morning. They're taking more of the room all the time.
More and more.
That they
Chad, good morning.
Good morning.
Chad's our Ocean Rescue Director. He's going to introduce us to everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Good morning, everybody. My name is Chad Motes. I'm Director of Nags Head Ocean Rescue. This is my 9th year as a director. I've been involved with the program since 2001. Started off as a lot of these guys here as a lifeguard, and advanced up, and now work as well with the fire department in the wintertime. But it's my pleasure this morning. We started on the beach Memorial Day weekend, and before that we had 2 weeks of training, our DOT first responder training the first week, and then our USLA approved open water lifeguard training. And been on the beach for about 10 days or so now, and it's been a good start to the season, and the water's finally starting to warm up. So without further ado, I'm going to allow each of these guys to come up to the podium here and give themselves a brief introduction.
Good morning, I'm John Kenny, went to town, lifeguard for 26 years. Best job, and I want to thank you all for having me.
Oh, come on, John, you're not that old.
Hello, my name is Michael Morrison. I'm originally from Hampton, Virginia. Went to North Carolina State University. This is currently my 10th year, and I am now a full-time employee of Dare County EMS.
Hi, I'm Matt Cahill from Wanchese. This is my 6th year working for Nags Head Ocean Rescue. I graduated East Carolina University as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Ryan Ziegler. I come from a town called Killable Hills, North Carolina. Some of you may be familiar. This is my 4th year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue, and I currently attend Appalachian State University.
Hi everybody, my name is Erica Otfa. I'm from New Brunswick, Canada, and this is my 4th year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue, and I just recently graduated from Mount Allison University.
Hi everybody, I'm Mike Tolbert. I'm from Richmond, Virginia. This is my 3rd year, and I graduated from Longwood University.
I'm Cody McKinney. This is my 3rd year as a firefighter with the Townsend Nags Head, and my 3rd year on the beach as well with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
Hey, my name is Mitchell Solon. I'm from Michigan. This is my 3rd year with Nags Head, and I graduated from Northern Michigan University.
Hey, my name is Brad. It's my 2nd year with Ocean Rescue, and I'm halfway through uni back home in Toronto. Hi, my name is Ben Michek. I'm from Rockville, Maryland. I went to North Carolina University, or North Carolina State University, and this is my second year with Nags Head.
Hi everyone, my name is Derek LaCour. I was born in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I'm currently attending Barton College, and this is my second year on Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
Hi, my name is Matt Rose. I'm from New Brunswick, Canada. I go to Mount Allison University, and this is my second year.
Hi, my name is Leah Raish Marston. I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia. This is my second year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue, and I'm currently entering my junior year at Mount Allison University.
Hey everyone, my name is Joe Fields. I'm from Chillicothe, Ohio. It's my second year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue, and I go to Hiram College.
Hello, my name is Ariel Studenmund, and I'm from Southern Pines, North Carolina. This is my second year with Nags Head, and I graduated from Warren Wilson College.
Hi everyone, I'm Laura Zavenhausen. I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia. This is my second year with Nags Head, and I'm currently going to Acadia University.
Hi, my name is Gabrielle Curtis. I'm from New Brunswick, Canada. It's my first year as a guard, and I recently graduated from Mount Allison University.
I'm Kelsey Block. This is my first year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue. I'm from Nova Scotia, Canada, where I attend Acadia University.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Feniak. I'm from Kildeville Hills, North Carolina. This is my first year as a guard, and I attend Appalachian State University.
Hi, I'm Trey Simmons. I'm originally from Chesapeake, Virginia, where I attended Virginia Tech, and this is my first year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
Hey, my name's Ryan Lewis. I'm from Mania, North Carolina. This is my first year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue. I'm attending COA.
Hi, my name is Josh. I'm from Richmond, Virginia. This is my first year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue, and I attend Radford University.
My name is Tyler Copeland. I'm with Nags Head Ocean Rescue. This is my first year. I go to Pitt Community College in the fall, and I'm from Mania, North Carolina.
Hi, my name is Jillian Ellis. I'm from Hammonds Plains, Nova Scotia. I currently attend Mount Allison University in New Brunswick, and this is my first year with Nags Head.
Hi, my name is Anissa Golshan. This is my first year with Nags Head. I'm from Hughesville, Pennsylvania, and I attend Penn State University.
Hey, I'm Holden McCohen. I'm from Mania, North Carolina. This is my first year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue, and I go to App State.
Hi, my name's James from Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. This is my first year on the beach, and I recently just graduated from Hiram College.
My name is Kenny Lindsay. I'm from Kildeville Hills, North Carolina. This is my first year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue, and I am a senior at Appalachian State University.
Hi, my name is Veronique Champagne. I'm from Quebec, Canada. I go to school to Université Laval, and this is my first year with Nags Head.
Hi, my name is Matt Crumley. This is my first year with Nags Head. I'm from Harrisonburg, Virginia.
Hi, my name is Ethan Adams. I'm from San Diego, California, and I currently attend VCU in Richmond.
Hi, my name is Michael Wood. I'm from Richmond, Virginia. It's my first year with Nags Head, and I go to James Madison University. I think that's about everybody. There's a couple folks that aren't here this morning. John's son, Zach Kenny, is not here this morning, nor Nicholas Brady. They're both over at Manio Middle School this morning, giving a presentation to 7th grade students about beach safety and life as a lifeguard on the beach during the summertime. So, one more we're missing? Tyler Wood.
15.
years. She won the race.
Oh, Beth McCall is also not here. She is a part-time lifeguard with us. She's been here for about 14 years, and she works as a physical therapist over at Colony Ridge Nursing Home in Nags Head as well. So, yeah, that's everybody.
Thank y'all for being here. We're counting on you taking care of everybody this summer. It's an important job.
Before they go, I'm here for the Wellness Committee. We participated in a Couch to 5K event May 19th. It's a competition between 5 towns, between Nags Head, Manio, Kill Devil Hills, Kitty Hawk, and Southern Shores. And the 5K we ran this year was the Cupcake 5K. And the awards that our town got, we had the fastest male and the fastest female. The fastest male was Captain Chad. And our fastest female was Leah Rachel Marsden? Or Shay Marsden, sorry. And the town also won the overall award for the fastest town with the average time of 33 minutes and 37 seconds.
Thank y'all. Great job by the Wellness Committee.
How many lifetime stands have we had? So every stand we've had is two more guards, right?
French Canadian.
Red.
See you later. There you go. Thank you. Have a good day.
That's okay.
Chad, once again, nobody communicates your name.
Sorry.
Having Chad come in first is not a surprise to anybody who's seen him run before. Our next item is the adoption of the agenda. I would like to pull items 4 and 6 off of the consent agenda if we could. The attorney'd like to delay number 6, and I'd like to speak for just a second on number 4.
Move to adopt as amended.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously. This is a time that we set aside for audience response. If you would, come to the podium and give us your name and your address, and we'll look for everybody to speak. Who would like to go first? Mr. Moore?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. Two subjects that I wanted to bring up this morning is, number one, hopefully we could add a trash can to the Altoona Street end. It's making people walk. There are 2 trash cans south of us, nothing north of us. And it's making the guests walk an awful distance to try to put away their trash. I know that in the past it was deleted from our program because the water was coming too high and the trucks couldn't get up and down the beach, but now they can with Beach Renourishment, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing, as all of you know. Secondly, I've had a number of absentee owners ask me, George, you know, what can we do about the trash in the creek in South Beach Road? It's really looking awfully bad. I know in the past they have, and it's been a long, long time since I've seen it, they've brought over prisoners because it is a state waterway, and I understand that. And I've explained that to people. It's not the town's waterway. So is there any way that we could get a hold of the state again and say, look, can't you please send some prisoners over and clean that out. It really is very unsightly for our guests coming. We're proud of our area, we're proud of our homes, proud of our rentals, streets, and all our activities, and yet when you arrive, you see nothing but trash your whole trip down to the house. So if that could be handled, that would be a wonderful thing to all. Finally, I'd like to let somebody in the lifeguard area know that as you pass 119 Altoona, that's Pat's and our house, the refrigerator is filled with cold drinks downstairs in the shed. We have often had lifeguards stop by. We've gotten friendly. In fact, there's a couple of them that are long since gone that Pat and I still keep in touch with because we made that relationship. So get the word out. Tell them just don't even knock on the door. Well, if you want to visit Pat and I, fine. But just go right in the shed downstairs. There's plenty of cold drinks, and enjoy the summer. Thanks for letting me speak today.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
That's nice.
At my age,
Good exit, George. That was a good exit.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
We're gonna have a little fun today because I'm gonna start with a philosopher.
Louis, if you'll give us your name and address,
I'm Louis
too.
Toth, and I live in the village. And I'm going to talk about feral cats. And there's a new organization called Feline Fix. It's up in Kitty Hawk, and it starts with a comment by Gandhi: "The greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way it treats its animals. Its animals are treated." Okay? And for the next one, we have, as you know, we have a problem with feral cats. And so do many other places in the United States, including cities like New York City and whatnot. And the problem is God-given. It's that a female can have, in a typical litter, 3 to 5 kittens. And they can do that 3 times a year. So 3 times 3 is 9, or talking about 10 kittens per cat per year, per female cat. And John Graves, who's the director of ASPCA down in Manio, said that a single cat can end up producing 140,000 cats. Okay? And I know what the technique here is. You got leash laws and things like that thing, which I can tell you don't work, because any construction site that you have, people are feeding the cats. And any store you have, the workers are feeding the cats. And I know that there's a culture here where you don't, people don't want to tell their names even if they're feeding them, or where the cats, if they're trapped, where they're trapped. Now, I was hoping that I would have Holly here. Holly is a young woman, and she is this pregnant. She's going to be giving out this baby, I think, on the 9th. Okay, her second, and she runs around with this thing. And she's a second generation trap, neuter, and release person. She doesn't want her last name told, and she doesn't want me to say where she is trapping these cats. But I can tell you, and this is going to be the fun part, the challenge. We're going to talk about things that you can do. I'm 74 years old, cancer, heart problems, okay? And together, we have trapped 15 feral cats, 7 of them females, and released them, all in Nags Head. 15 trapped, neutered. I spent over $1,000, and Holly's mother, who's down in Charlotte, has been helping out too on the finances of this. And of course, the vets are doing this at below cost, they say, of trapping them. So the key words are trap, neuter, and release. This organization, which came from Gandhi, had Gandhi up there, is a new organization in Kitty Hawk. going to help people with trap, neuter, and release. It's endorsed by ASPCA. Okay, so I want to have it, sort of play a game with you guys, because I'm going to challenge this, okay? In my life, I'm proud of a lot of things. First career, I was the first professor in material science at the University of Minnesota, and I helped hire a person who became dean at the University of Virginia, chairman at MIT, president of Michigan Tech, and my friend became president of the University of Minnesota. Then I went to NSF, where it was greatness. And I like this town because you are good on certain things. You lead in windmills. You've got those pavers and water conservation, right? And so you got a bathroom where you got solar panels, heating it and using water that you recycle. So my challenge is, if Holly and I, it's easy, right? Old man, very pregnant woman, can do 15. Can you do something with the cat problem? I think you got to go with trap, neuter, and release, a return. And I would, as an old professor, with graduate students, you give some ideas. How about changing the culture? Why is Holly afraid to give out her last name? Why are she and other people are the same thing? Owners don't want to report that they have cats because they'd be, quote, responsible for them. So maybe change the culture and adopt something where you can really make a big inroad. Just imagine if you had 5 people like us, 5 groups like us. Instead of 15, you'd have 75. Okay, I'm responsible for maybe not having 350 kittens, right? If a cat lasts for 5 years, okay, 15 times 5.
Mr. Toth, if you can bring it to a close.
I will.
Sorry, sir.
Okay, but anyway, and so as an old professor, I'm going to give you that challenge. Do something with feral cats that you can be proud of. I mean, just trapping them and euthanizing them ain't going to count. But if you can do something that would maybe be the leader in the first town in the Outer Banks, okay? I leave you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning. I'm Rufus Pritchard. I'm from Manio. We own the Dunes Restaurant. My son is with me, Patrick. He's one of my managers. I'm here because we had a fire last week. We had a great weekend, Memorial Day weekend, rolling right through it, and Monday morning we got hit with a fire. I don't think I ever understood how devastating a fire can be, although I've heard how devastating it can be. But it's a mess, and it just throws everything out of kilter altogether. It's crazy. But I just want the town to know how much I appreciate y'all, how good it's been to work with the town since that has happened. The day that it was, Fire Chief Kevin Zork and all the other firemen that were there, they did a great job. I appreciate the police department, as they were there extremely fast as well. They were on the scene. And in the restaurant business, there's service and hospitality, services which you expect to be done in an efficient manner. Hospitality is when you develop a different rapport with the guest. You do something that is unexpected. Gentleman says he's looking for Richmond Times. We don't have it. The waitress tells the manager sends a busboy out to get it. You bring it back. That's hospitality. That's doing something over and above. And I just want to tell you that Tony Wyndham, that is one of your town employees, is pretty sharp. He smelled the smoke from 2 miles away as he was riding down the bypass, and went a little bit further to check out what was going on and where it was coming from. Of course, he got to the restaurant, and he could see it bellowing out of the hood system, and he's the one that called in the fire department. So had he not done that, one of the investigators told me that we were probably 20, 30 minutes away from that thing just being totally out of control, and we'd have nothing. As it is, we've got the building, we got us a mess, and we're in the process of doing what we can to clean this thing up as quickly as possible. We got a bunch of employees with tears in their eyes that morning that had come to work, so we want to get this place open back up, and I just am here to say thank you very much. I appreciate the town, and I appreciate the support that we have gotten as well. I've gotten phone calls all over the place, and it's like, what can we do? But you know, it's just one day at a time. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard, and thank you for recognizing our employee that was very observant.
He was, absolutely.
Morning, Mayor, Board. Kevin Zork, Fire Chief. It's always a pleasure when I can stand before you and recognize the good accomplishments and positive results of our town staff. And I'm also here to talk about the Dunes Restaurant fire on May 27th. Our firefighters from Station 21 and 16 responded, established water supply, and made a quick knockdown on the fire. They did an excellent job, and we were assisted by the town of Kill Devil Hills, Kitty Hawk, and Collington. Nags Head PD was there on site. They secured the scene. They did an excellent job, investigated, they interviewed bystanders, and it went without a flaw. There were no injuries, and although there was some significant damage, we certainly wish the Pritchards well in opening up as quickly as possible. We do know that restaurants or buildings that sustain such serious fire damage never reopen. And since fire normally doubles every minute, we know that early notification was the key in this fire. And I also would like to recognize Tony Wyndham. It was very fortuitous indeed that he happened to be out in the area and smelled the smoke, took the time to come back and to investigate further. He's credited with that early fire notification, and he made the difference. That was the tipping point for us. It might have been a different story, as Mr. Pritchard so well explained. Although Mr. Wyndham could not be here today due to a family emergency, we do want to thank him for his awareness and willingness to get involved and to ultimately limit the damage to the facility. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Anybody else for public comment this morning? Good morning, sir.
I'm here to thank you. My name's Jack McCombs. I live in Kill Devil Hills. Many of you, or some of you here, know I ride a bicycle. I ride a bicycle not 1 or 2 miles, but literally thousands of miles over the roads of Dare County. I want to thank the town for the absolute wonderful support that for the past 6 years you've given to this young group called Bike to Build. This is a group of young college students or recent graduates that start in Nags Head, and they pedal to San Diego, California. Right now, they left here on May 17th, and they're now in Tennessee, 905 miles into their ride. When I first heard about this group, I was contacted because my name is now out on the internet. If you want to know anything about cycling, I get emails. And they said they were coming to Nags Head. I don't know how they picked Nags Head, but they picked you folks to start their ride. And then I found out about their experience level. Many of these young people have never ridden a road bike. These are the bikes with the real thin tires and wheels. And if you're not competent on it, it's very easy to crash. What I feared was one of these young people would crash or do something foolish on the road, get struck by a car, be seriously injured or killed. This is an organization that gets national attention, and I did not want negative attention to be given to Nags Head and the Outer Banks, so I got involved. I'm more or less their safety coordinator. When they come in, I talk to them about safety issues, then I take them for what they call a shakedown ride, and always emphasizing safety. We've never lost a rider in the group that started here. They have lost riders. They have had cyclists that have been killed on their ride. It's never happened to us. I want to thank Commissioner Sadler, who gave many of the presentations at what they call the wheel dip ceremony, and you see the picture right there. And this year, Commissioner Walters gave a very nice speech. these, I say children, young adults, they are absolutely vibrating with excitement because they know they're facing a 3,000-mile trip across the United States, and it's fantastic. Pastor Rick here, he is instrumental because they always stay at his church when they come in, and that's a great thing. Courtney Gallup is always the master of ceremonies. I just want to thank you folks for doing such a good job and keeping these kids safe. Chief Brinkley, it's always a pleasure to work with the chief. And without him and his officers, I would really fear leading these kids out of Nags Head and on to 264 en route to Swan Quarter. So thanks very much, Chief. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. And thanks, Commissioner Sadler and Commissioner Walters, for getting up early in the morning to, it doesn't happen at 9 o'clock.
But it's a wonderful thing to see them take off. It's great.
We're so excited.
It's a lot of riding. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, Rick Lawrenson, and I hang around Nags Head a lot. Don't live here, but do a lot of things. I'm a grandfather of two students at Nags Head Elementary School. And I so much appreciate all the efforts that the town does in providing safety and teaching safety at the school. I've been involved in October with the fire departments teaching the children about fire safety. I've been involved in the spring when the police department comes in and does the bicycle safety, the instruction that they do. And I've been and I've shared this with Chief Brinkley, been very pleased, especially since events that have affected our nation in the last months, to see on a regular basis in the mornings when I occasionally drop grandkids off at school, to see a Nags Head police officer there in front of the school. To me, that's a very good thing. And so I want to say that I understand that in this next budget, there has been proposed a school resource officer for Nags Head Elementary School, which I think is excellent. I think is needed in every school in this country. And I just want to say I appreciate that being in the budget and would encourage you all to make sure that that's included for the safety of our children and our faculty at the school that we host.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment this morning? Seeing none, we're going to close our public comment period. Mr. Auburn?
I'm kind of feeling kind of proud of our town right now with all those wonderful comments that were said this morning. And even more proud now to be standing next to Roberta, our PIO. One thing I did want to share, I spoke with Tony Wyndham yesterday on his father passed away, and that's why he couldn't be here to be recognized today. And in speaking with him, what he did in his mind was not that big a deal, because he felt like we're a family, not just employees are a family, but we as a town are a family. And he felt like Roxy and Rufus and the Pritchards and the Doones are part of that family, so he needs to look out for them. So that's why he did it, and I was just really proud of that. Also very proud of our most recent graduate of the Municipal and County Administration course, Roberta Thuman, our Public Information Officer, who graduated in April of 2013. She's the third to graduate from the town, with Benita Hurdle and Kim Kinney being the others. And just to let you know about this course and what she was learning and what she was doing while she was there, it's a comprehensive course that's designed for city and county officials whose responsibilities require an understanding of local government functions beyond individual areas of specialization. So it's an all-encompassing, all-town government course. The major subject areas are taught by more than 50 School of Government faculty members and guest instructors. The course covers local government law, organization and management, finance and budgeting, public employment law, planning and regulation and development, and municipal and county services. Participants gained an appreciation for the following: legal framework and administrative requirements of North Carolina and city government, how city and county services are organized and provided, interrelation among different activities, or building broader network of local government peers, and that's one of the benefits, not only the information and knowledge she gained, but that peer network that she'll be able to take with her. And she now has contacts across the state of classmates that were with her that she knows that she can now find out, how do you do this, what's the best way to do that. And I know that Benita and Kim are also still to this day taking advantage of that. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce and recognize Roberta for her completion of the municipal and county administration course. Thank you.
Roberta, if you'll come up. We also have a very nice framed certificate from the UNC School of Government. So, nice Carolina blue. Congratulations. Thank you very much for keeping on educating.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good job.
Next, Mayor and Board, if I could, recognize Mr. Dave Clark on the occasion of his retirement. When I first took this job, they were retiring left and right, and then there was a little gap, and now Dave's gone, so I'm hoping we have a little more of a gap before the next one comes. But last time I was before you with Dave, the single greatest thing I can say about Dave is what a great man Dave Clark is. He is a truly, genuinely kind, caring, and good man. He's a man of strong faith and strong conviction. He's a man that cares strongly about people and family. His wife Joanne is here. Another one of those retirees that went pretty quick after I got here. These two are inseparable. They make quite a pair. I guess Joanne couldn't do everything in retirement that she wanted to, so Dave's come home to pick up the honey-do list. Dave, he's very well spoken. He could do a much better job of recognizing himself than I could. He's probably the best that we've had, and because he is such a good, caring man, that he's probably the best we've ever had at standing up here. And when the employees come up to get their moment of recognition, he truly makes the best of it for them. Dave spent, I think, the first 10 years as the Public Works Director, and the last couple as the Water Utility Director. And the last thing that he tried to get accomplished before he left, I'm going to give him the opportunity to say I told you so, and that was the water connection policy. We got a letter that Ralph handed me May 30th that said, more or less says, policy's great, but you need an ordinance. So Dave, I'll say it for you, I told you to. I'd rather you say it because you're retired. But I very much appreciate the work and the service that Dave's given to this town, the caring, and again, the quality, the way in which he handled himself, the way in which he carried himself was a great example for all of our employees, and he and his wife both have been great team members. Both will be missed. That corner office now, walking by there, not hearing the classical music that soothed us all, not hearing that anymore, he's missed already. So Dave, thank you. Enjoy retirement.
Dave, we've got a lovely plaque for you. We do hope your retirement days are filled not just with honey-do lists, but I hope lots of fun stuff too.
Busier now than ever before.
I can imagine.
I did it all when I was still working.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for all your years.
Absolutely.
You earned it. As I reflect back upon a working life that started 47 years ago this fall, when I held my hand up and swore to uphold the Constitution and obey the orders of those appointed above me, I think about my career starting out in a very low position and with a very big organization serving my country. After school, I worked for a state for 4 years and then worked for counties and finally ended up in a town. So the unit of government I worked for went down as the responsibilities that I assumed went up. It's been a great ride. I've loved every minute of it. I appreciate very much this board and previous members of this board, previous town managers. The opportunity to serve the town of Nags Head was a wonderful opportunity, and I just appreciate so much the camaraderie that the employees have. As a director, as a manager, you find out very quickly, if you didn't know it to start with, that you may be judged on the performance of your department, but it's not yourself that's doing the work. It's people like Tony Wyndham. It's people who do things every day that are over and above and beyond the call of duty. And that's what characterizes the employees of Nags Head, and particularly those of the Public Works Department. And I'm very grateful for the work that Ralph and the supervisors and superintendents and the employees did during my tenure to make me look good, when in fact they were the ones that were really doing the work, and they're the ones that deserve recognition. And I just want to thank you again, and I'm sure I'll be back occasionally, but I'll be here during the audience response portion instead of during a public hearing. Thank you all very much, and God bless you.
Thank you, Dave. Well done. Our next item is the consent agenda. With the removal, we've removed 4 and 6, 4 for later discussion and 6 for a later meeting.
Move to adopt as amended.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. We're going to have a 2-minute recess, or slightly somewhere around there. You're going to do the presentation for the public hearing on the budget, correct?
Yes, sir. Just briefly before the public hearing, to let everyone know the changes from the manager's recommended budget into present. You'll see on the screen changes to revenues, $386,125, and underneath you'll see the dollar amount that equals that. We had to make an adjustment for the DMV rate in tax and DMV rate for beach nourishment for the consistency there. Add $2,500 for the parks and path, again, due to the DMV tax rate. Some of that's, a lot of that's just housekeeping. We carried forward $125,000 from fund balance from unspent contingency. Moved the fire grant into this coming fiscal year out of 14-15. Increased the hold harmless based on current year actual. We've eliminated the 1% early payment for tax discount for savings of $50,000. And we increased, because of the historical actual, raised the revenue that we've seen because of the increase for beach driving permits. And then we made some adjustments of reduction, just again for housekeeping for the CAMA grant and a safety grant. Same amount equals to the expenditures. Had to increase a little bit the audit fee, increased benefits for vacant positions in admin services. Again, most of this is just housekeeping. $22,000 increase for unemployment based on revised estimate, and that's a change we've been seeing coming because of the changes in legislature. Increased capital reserve fund contributing for beach nourishment. $39,000 increase for the 2% 401k match, and that's in there. Employees must match in order to receive that benefit, which is a change from current fiscal year. $32,000 for the fire grant into the current year, and again eliminate the safety grant. Once we made all the changes, there was an increase. There was a small amount remaining, so I put it where, again, in overtime, because that's where we have, going back where we've needed the money was overtime. And then we increased fuel for the beach educator for the ATV, and that position, I believe, is set to start tomorrow. What this does is it allows the driver of the ATV to go to Station 20 to get gas versus going across the bypass over to the gas pumps at 8th Street. And that's the general fund. Water fund, changes in revenue. We've adjusted budget revenues for septic loan repayment. The water sales adjustment there of a reduction. Changes to expenditures, added a vendor for add vendor financing omitted in recommended budget due to software error. And then we increased, again, for the same reason, the 2% match in 401k at $4,700. So those are the changes, and open it for public hearing.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lighty, if you'll conduct our public hearing for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As part of the Local Government Budget and Fiscal Control Act, the town is required to hold this public hearing, and the purpose of the public hearing is to give members of the public an opportunity to come and comment on the town's proposed budget. And so at this time, anyone who wishes to comment on the town's proposed budget may do so. If you'll please approach the podium, tell us who you are and where you live, and then if you'll address your comments regarding the budget to the Board of Commissioners. First.
Good morning. My name is Marvin Demers, 8819 South Old Oregon Inlet Road. I'd just like to express appreciation for all the work that's gone into this budget preparation, just being involved on the periphery, been able to see the complexity of the process and the expertise that needs to go into it. And all of those things have been very good. I'd like to pick out just one little minor thing and give special recognition to that topic, and appreciation to the commissioners for setting the goal for this, and to the manager and the staff for executing it, and that's further enhancing our recycling program. Nags Head, I think, has always been leaning forward on recycling, but this time I think we've taken another large step forward in the budget to further enhance the recycling. There were a lot of options out there, could have gone in many different directions. I think any direction forward is a good direction, and the pilot program, I think, is a very good step in the right direction, and I'm hoping we can expand it even further in the future. Thank you very much for what you've done.
Thank you, Mr. Demers. Next, anyone else wish to comment on the budget? Mr. Ratzenberger?
John Ratzenberger, 119 Sea-Watch. I have been to all of the budget meetings, and I want to thank, first off, I want to thank the town for making all of the budget presentations available online several days ahead of time so that citizens could go out and see, even if it was incomprehensible, at least see what it was there and be prepared to come to the meeting. So that was a good thing. I don't think we've done that well in previous years, so that helped. I want to talk about 4 or 5 things. Some of them are related, and I have a whole bunch of spreadsheets, but I'm not going to put them up there unless we get that far into the weeds. First off, I want to support the deputy fire chief. I've worked with public safety for several years in events, and the fire department, like the police department, is an operational department, not an administrative department. They don't sit in the offices, they're out there doing things. And when the boss is out doing big things with some of his crew, there needs to be somebody back that can organize the rest of them, control the rest of them, get them moving, et cetera, et cetera. Too long, we've had a gap in there. We've all heard about how the fire captains rotate through a pseudo deputy chief position, but that's no kind of stability for the town or anything else. It also doesn't provide a training platform for the fire captains to move into a deputy slot to ultimately become a deputy. So there's a lot about career progression, the rest of it. And I strongly urge that we have a deputy fire chief position in there for those reasons. On the other hand, and I got to talk against the school resource officer. I will acknowledge that we need a beach educator, and that's a good thing. It worked. But And I understand the importance of the schools and the children and this and that, but we're reacting without looking at the risk, of the real risk that we have here. And I'm not sure we have it. I'm not sure why we would bring somebody in to stay at the school and then say they've got an additional duty of writing grants. That's office space, computer time, and sitting there poking away, not protecting the school, but writing grants. I'm not sure why anybody would bring in the most junior officer of the force to write grants when that should be the duty of the sergeants or the deputy chief as they learn to work their way upward and learn the administration and requirements to train themselves for the future. I applaud the department for setting out at the stoplights, at the light by the school, and all that they do. And maybe we could do more. But quite frankly, as a citizen here, I would rather see a second day shift, and that could be a shift made up of Nags Head County and State Police. Get out there on 158 in vehicles and set at the stoplights, roughly from maybe just north of the post office to just down past the village, and clamp down on red light running. The biggest problem we've got in this town, and I don't know, fortunately, we've not had people just cut in half at the intersections. It's epidemic. And it's not a matter of an accident. People are accelerating through the light from a distance. They're just flat being ignored. I had this coming over this morning. I had 2 cars down at Sea Chase. Leaving the post office yesterday, there were 2 cars up there. Every intersection in this stretch, they just flat ignore it, and that's year-round. That is a real problem and a real risk. And if they, by the way, they cut through on a school bus or something, then we've got more school kids at risk from that than we do from something else. I'm just going to close it by asking, are we now going to double security on the marathon, the Outer Banks Marathon, because of what happened in Boston? We have to be careful not to be like the TSA and the FAA, which is doing nothing but reacting to to events after the fact instead of looking ahead at the risk. I'll leave that alone. Okay, we all know about revaluation. The net effect of revaluation townwide was a 26% drop in property value. In the MSD, that was effectively a 30% drop. It dropped far more in the MSD than it did in and what I'm going to call the non-MSD, which is not really the complete west side, it's just anybody not in the MSD, it dropped 23%. We all knew it would happen. The MSD dropped a lot because they were distinctly overvalued, and the non-MSD dropped less. Prior to revaluation, the 51% of the collected taxes on property value came out of the MSD, and that includes the beach nourishment numbers. So I'm including beach nourishment in this, and I will lead off by I'm not including parks and paths 1% in anything I talk about now. The non-MSD was paying 49% of those taxes. Now we've got an increase. Now, the town manager came up and his initial draft budget, we all know that under a reval, the taxing authority is supposed to come up with what's a revenue neutral number to the taxing authority. It's not to the people down below. Everybody's house will be different somewhere. The town manager came up with an initial budget where he figured and put out that a revenue neutral number for the town-wide portion was 24 cents. And the revenue neutral number for the MSD would be, for the beach nourishment alone, would be 23 cents. That 24 cents town-wide included a penny for the beach nourishment. So, I mean, these figures are tough. You had to sit through all this to understand. So he came up and said 24 cents townwide, which includes their share of beach nourishment, and then the 23 cents for the MSD. The 24 cents, of course, is an increase from 17.75 to 24. The MSD is an increase from 16 to 23. The net of that increase in there was basically, he kept it as close as he could, and the net of that was basically split the share of the property value between 50% to the MSD and 50% to the non-MSD. And I have all the spreadsheets in the world here where I figured that out. That's cool. And the total value, the total tax levy before reval was $7,342,000. And after his initial submission, the total tax levy would be $7,389,000. That is, with 50,000 bucks is about as pretty close to revenue neutral without getting a half dozen decimal points out. Good. During the budget discussions, there was some feeling that, well, maybe we ought to take and bring up the beach nourishment portion of the town-wide side to be consistent with what it was before, and take advantage of making the additional money and put it away for a rainy day for beach nourishment. I think that's basically what was said, the gist of it. Okay, but the net of doing that actually throws the burden onto the west side, or the non-MSD, not the MSD. By the time you take and then go to what is the true revenue neutral formula of 25.7 townwide, plus the MSD pays 0.23 for beach nourishment, you end up flip-flopping the percentages. The MSD portion of the town budget, or the town taxes, is now 49%. The non-MSD is 51%. So we've thrown that up, and it's a increase of almost $400,000 onto the west side. If you take all of that and you add in the fact that the county is going to 43 cents, which is a $1.2 million or $3 million increase in the town of Nags Head, for the property owners in the town of Nags Head, we have thrown a significant burden onto the west side, the smaller homes, the ones that took the bigger hit, the ones that took, and whose property values are down. So I would really rethink where we want to go with this, and do we really need to put $400,000 or $500,000 more into the rainy day beach nourishment fund now? I mean, we've been hit with reval, which has thrown some number of people underwater on their mortgage. I mean, that's a pretty good hit. So if you didn't put a lot of money down, or you're a brand new owner, you could be in difficulty with that. There's a fair-sized tax hit for everybody, and now we're adding to the rainy day fund. I fully agree with the rainy day fund. As you know, I've been involved in beach nourishment since we started talking and working for it. But do we really need it this year? And I would suggest you look at that. I also would suggest that you look at the penny for parks and paths, because that just adds another burden of $230-some thousand of tax levy to the town. And again, it's going to be split roughly 2/3 to the west and 1/3 to the MSD. I'm not against parks and paths. I think the multi-use path that we have working now, I mean, that's as good as sliced bread. I mean, that's really neat, and I would throw anything we got at it to finish it, all the way, up and down, and get it repaired, the repairs taking place. I had no problem with that. But what we have for this penny is we don't have a plan. We have some statements that we'll use it on parks or paths. We have some statements to use it on parks. We have some statements to use it on Soundside boardwalks and all that. Well, do we really want to throw a whole penny in without a plan on top of everything else? And maybe go back and look at what is the most important park and path thing to address and see if somewhere in these budget numbers between what revenue neutral thing to take and what piece and part of a park and path to take, can we come up with a number, town-wide and whatnot, that is going to give some slack on the west side? Because we're not doing it. And if you take in the fact that we're eliminating the 1% early payment, I mean, there's a little bitty hit to everybody's being dropped right in there. And we've done a pretty good job of keeping, we haven't done like the county, which has added 3 or 4 or 5% of extra stuff to the budget. But, so I'd like you to think about those numbers, and I realize this is very complicated. I just tear my hair out with my spreadsheets, which is why I will not put them up there unless they're asked to. But it's tough this year trying to work the reval, the beach nourishment, and all this other stuff and come up with a balancing act that, oh, by the way, is legal because we can't be making different tax rates unless we're carving out different districts and everything else. So that's my comment on the budget. I really wish we would take a better look at this thing and see if we really need to bite off all this at the same time and understand the impact of what it's going to make, particularly on the west side of town. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ratzenberger. Would anyone else like to comment on the budget? Last chance. All right, if not, at this time we will close the public hearing to consider the town's proposed budget, and the board may begin its deliberations.
I don't often start these discussions, but I will take advantage of doing that this time. And I won't extend those comments after that. I will shut up after I say my piece. First, I'd like to compliment Mr. Ogburn on the budget process this year. The board received a proposed budget that was presented well and offered a well-formed vision for the town. As we requested, Mr. Ogburn gave us his best recommendation and offered clear supporting information. As we went through the budget workshop process, town staff's responses to questions from the board were quick and comprehensive. I voiced concerns at a number of the budget provisions through the workshop process. We determined there was a consensus to move forward each step. In other words, I got outvoted. And I don't want to be repetitive, but I feel this is the right time to repeat my concerns about this budget and some of the decisions that it represents. This budget increases staffing and services. It collects more than we need to pay our beach nourishment expense and increases the tax rate on the heels of last year's tax hike. We seem to think the economy has recovered and it's time to spend. In my opinion, it's not, and our private sector is still feeling the effects of the economy. Our increase in the tax burden will add to an increasing expense burden for all of our taxpayers. Indeed, this year's tax increase will affect more of our year-round residents, the west side, than any previous tax increase because of the reevaluation of property. Just because the tax rate will change and our taxpayers may be confused about the tax rate increase is a very poor reason to slide an actual tax increase over the neutral rate into the mix. I think raising taxes now to provide for nice-to-have expenses is a mistake. Adding another police officer, to me, is not warranted to provide coverage specifically to the beach and the elementary school. Use existing resources. We have one of the largest police departments on the beach and one of the highest officer-to-resident ratios in the whole state. Choose your priorities and place your officers where you see the need. An emergency call at the elementary school would generate a swift and large response, but to schedule an officer whose typical day includes an hour's foot patrol of the Board of Education is simply not good use of our limited resources. Same thing on the beach patrol. Visitor education is wonderful, but we don't need a full-time police officer to provide this nice-to-have service. Finally, we can take better care, this is finally for this paragraph, not for the whole thing. We can take better care of our existing staff if we refrain from increasing the number of personnel. The most glaring example of the existing disconnect between taxpayers and government staff is our policy of paying for 40 hours even if the employee works 37 and a half. When you pay someone to do a job for you personally, do you add 6% to the total to make sure they feel good about it? It just doesn't happen, except in government. Whether it's a practice of the state or the county or the town, it's not fair to the taxpayer who is working 40 and getting paid for 40. It's amazing that we've been through a recession, the private sector has cut and cut, and government insists on paying for hours not worked, plus funding not one but two retirement plans. I do agree with the change in our 401k contributions, where we match the employee's contribution rather than just having the employer contributing. Part of our tax increase is a penny for parks and paths. Now, I think most of us support parks and paths, and we have been very efficient in the past with our path construction using grants. I also agree that we need to emphasize maintenance on the existing paths, but it needs to be added on the expense side, not the income side. A penny increase for parks and paths is just a blank check. Put the expenses for maintaining the paths in the budget. Don't replace park playground equipment just because it's old if it's still serviceable. Parks and paths are being used to justify a penny tax increase, and we are pulling them out of the competition with all the other expenses. Governing is choosing, and these expenses should be prioritized every year instead of just adding a penny to the tax rate. It's an easy way out. Lastly, we are proposing to collect money to repay our beach nourishment debt, but we are not just collecting the $35 million it costs for nourishment. This budget proposes to collect over $5 million in additional taxes to make it easier for future boards. This increase in expense, before we really have the results on nourishment, is an additional burden on all property owners in Nags Head. And it comes at an incredibly poor time. Insurance costs are going up for all property owners in Nags Head, and these costs are rising far faster than the incomes of the residents or the investment property owners. Each increase in costs makes it a little less desirable to own property here. Why in the world would we want to collect dollars to pay for the existing nourishment and add the cost of future nourishment to the burden as well? It wasn't necessary the first time, and it's not necessary now. We plan to refund $500,000 to Dare County. Why wouldn't we refund some of the extra $5 million to our taxpayers? The manager attempted to soften the burden by reducing the amount paid by the entire town. What we need to do is collect enough to pay the debt and retain the approximately $1 million that are restricted funds. And yes, I would agree that the 2 cents that is on the entire town, soon to be 2.7 cents, is the place to reduce the amount collected. If we can reduce the town-wide nourishment tax by 2 cents and still meet our repayment obligations, we should do it. We're budgeting like the economy is good, after doubling taxes on our ocean front and an over 10% increase on all taxpayers last year. We're increasing by 10% again for nice-to-have items and increased services. In my opinion, it's the wrong response, but it does appear to be the majority response on the board. I've given my opinion, and my regret is not being able to find a majority to hold the line on taxes by making some of those tough choices. We run the risk of driving property owners away from Nags Head with continually increasing costs, and the town will suffer in the future because we are not making the hard choices and setting priorities. June is not over yet. There's still time for the board to craft a better budget than this. I'm done.
Very nice, Bo. Very well said. I don't agree with it, but it's real.
And I think all of our opinions are shaped by our experiences.
Sure.
Those are where my experiences lead me.
Sure.
Who would like to go next?
I'll be more than happy
Yes,
to
sir.
jump in there. As most everybody is aware, I have always taken the opportunity to say that the money that we have stuffed away, which now we have put rules and regulations on to keep it at a minimum, is the taxpayers' money to start off with. It's not our money, it belongs to the people. We have, and I know Anna and doesn't agree with me, but we have a balance of money in the town of Nags Head, unlike most any other government down here. We are, and we've said on numerous occasions, the stewards of the taxpayers' money. Are we doing the right thing? Are we actually, by the way we've done a budget, and John's absolutely right in his purview about whether or not we should be paying now or paying later, but are we doing the right thing by increasing the tax rate in order to maintain the things that are requested or needed? And that's where the variance comes is, you don't agree that we need another police officer. I, on the other hand, think, probably we need 2, but that's the way we are. Public safety is very, very important to me, and I think that goes without saying. But you got to pay for it, and it depends on what level of service that you want to maintain. That's where it's always been. Backing into what I want to get to anyway, or segueing it into, we have money. We don't have to increase the tax rate. It doesn't have to be done. There might be another way to do it. I mean, there might be an easier way to do it. I'm not going to make those recommendations. The recommendation is what's in front of you, and you're either going to vote for it or vote against it. I don't disagree at all with the, let's not overburden the taxpayers at the present time, because we don't know what's it's going to be like in the near future. However, working on the track record that we have, I think we have done an excellent job in making those really, really important decisions for the future of the town of Nags Head. I got to, again, thank the manager for his presentation for the budget. I think it is a logical, low-tax increase budget and it shows the needs, or it provides an end to the needs of stuff that we have. However, I still think we're a little shy. I don't agree with everything that he put in there either. I'd like to see some additional stuff. And I'm not a tax and spend type of guy. I don't believe in that either, like anybody else. Nobody wants to raise the taxes. However, if we don't want to raise the taxes, there's other ways to do it. You either cut the budget and don't provide the services at all, or you find another means to pay for it. I'm done.
Okay. I too would like to thank the manager for his budget presentation. A great deal of thought went into that in working with the directors and the staff, and this process this year I thought was really excellent. I think everyone did a great job. We've had 3 workshops where we've discussed many of the issues within the budget. The revaluation process, that's a call by our county, and it had to be done this year by law. It couldn't be put off anymore. It probably should be done more frequently, but we have to deal with the decision of the county and what they had to do by law. Regarding some of the issues, especially when it comes to staffing and the feeling that we are paying our employees for 40 hours when they're only working 37.5, I disagree with that interpretation. Having been a business owner previously, you pay people for the hours that they work. Many, whether it's county, municipal, or state, their work week is a 37.5-hour work week, and there are a lot of reasons for that, and the town has done that for 52 years. The salary that people receive, the staff receives, is based on a 37.5-hour work week. You can't just automatically tell them that, oh, we're going to pay you the same salary, but now we want you to work 40 hours a week, because unless they are exempt, meaning they supervise 2 or more people, their wages are hourly. So in order to have them work 40 hours a week, you're going to have to increase their hourly, the salary divided by the 37.5 is their hourly wage. So if you want them to work 40 hours a week, you're going to have to increase their salary for that additional 2.5 hours you ask them to work. And because of the workday isn't always the perfect 8 hours, then you run into the overtime issue, and you're actually going to be paying them more. So I'm not even sure if legally it could be done to say, I'm giving you the same salary, but now you're going to work 40 hours a week, and it's not what's done in the state or in the county, and it's never been done here. So I kind of disagree with that line of thinking, and I've been on both sides of that. So regarding the parks and paths, we as a board adopted our recreation plan. There were many recommendations in there, and we adopted it. We went through it. We adopted an entire plan, a very comprehensive document, not only to address today's needs, but future needs. In order for us to address those needs, we need the funding to do so. We've set values in our town. We want to become greener. We want our community to become healthier. We have wellness incentives in our town. We want parks, we want paths, we want, multimodal transportation. And I believe that the 1 cent, helps us get there. To say that we don't have a plan, I believe, is maybe perhaps not quite accurate, because we do have a plan. We have a written document with a plan. And some of that is prioritized in that document. And I don't know anyone in our community who does not like our sidewalks and our beach road path and all of those things. Regarding the renourishment and maintenance, adding the 0.7 for that, it does hit the west side a little harder this year, but we all benefit from the beach. I mean, every single person in our community benefits from that beach nourishment. The nourishment, thanks to all of you who were sitting here and really had the guts and the foresight to make that decision. You have saved our community by saving oceanfront homes, by saving our tax base. I don't think there's anybody anywhere that thinks that there's probably a few, that thinks that you all made the wrong decision on beach nourishment, and I support that decision. It may not be here forever. We don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I know it's already saved us with a few storms that we've had. It will have to be renourished. It will have to be maintained. We know that just from looking at other projects. And better to have the funds to do it when we need it, or some of those funds at least. I think it's a very proactive approach rather than just starting from zero again. We have a fund balance policy. We worked hard through that last year, because when we do have a storm and there is infrastructure damage, if we don't have those funds, we're going to be in sad shape, because funds are needed immediately. We can get reimbursed later for those funds, but we need the money up front in order to deal with those needs. I've had all my comments throughout the workshops. I support the budget. I think we've worked through it pretty well. I would like to think that we could unanimously support the budget, but we're all different. We all have different experiences. We all have different opinions. That's what makes a board. The diversity of a board is a good thing. We all represent a variety of experiences. So that's my comment.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sapp?
I'm going to just be as brief as possible, but I want to touch on something Doug said. Yes, there is money in I like to call it the savings account, because that's what you usually go to when you're in immediate need of funds. And the town has a healthy balance. That balance has come through the years of carefully managing the budget with the prior managers here and the prior board. I know that we all remember Isabel. It didn't happen here. It happened south of us. It will not take an Isabel to clean us out. And that's one of the reasons that I feel comfortable keeping a healthy balance. It's for emergencies. It is for the time when we need it, and need it now. Because if you don't have the cash to pay for the cleanup, you don't have cleanup. And we have done very well in all of the skirmishes that we've had. And I am very comfortable with the policy that the board set last year, which is 50% of the budget or $5 million, whichever is greater. Is that right, Cliff?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to leave. I'm not going to touch that. Let's talk just for a second about beach nourishment. Beach nourishment was a big 7-year struggle with this board. And yes, people fought against the beach nourishment because it hit a lot of people hard when it came to paying it. I, again and again, have been called on the phone, email, thanking this board for having the guts to do that. They're paying, but you know what? It has been worth it. And you know something else? It ends. It's a 5-year debt. We don't need a zero balance at the end of that 5 years because that sand's not going to stay forever. I'm already understanding now that the northern towns are getting a higher estimate on their beach nourishment project because there are more people doing beach nourishments all over the country, so they're not getting the deal that we got when we spent our $35 million. Whether it's 3 years from now or 8 years from now, we need a fund because I, for one, don't want to go out there and say, municipal service district, guess what? We're going to have to hit you with 20 cents this time. I'd like to say we only need 5 cents from you guys because we have 7 million or 8 million or 10 million by that time in that fund. So saying that, I support leaving that tax as it is until the end of it, 5 years, which I think there's, is it three years left on that? This year and 2 more. I support that 100%. No, I don't support a tax increase, but you know what? If you continue with the level of service that the town manager hears time and again, don't cut this, don't cut that. If you continue that level of service, you have got to find the money to pay for the service, and things don't stay the same. We all know that. Our insurance is going up. Apparently, our taxes are going to go up. But you either cut the services to lower the tax, or you leave them where they are. And this is a service, the same service level with the addition of the deputy fire chief, which I totally support. I couldn't support it last year, but it has shown me that it needs to be in the budget this year. I support tremendously the officer in the Nags Head Elementary School. The person on the beach, it was put there not only just to be an ambassador to the beach, but to try and help with the situations we were running into, specifically with animals running at large. So that person does more than just says, hi, how are you, and welcome to the beach. The 1 cent on the recreation, I'll just say this. Duck, normally I would say Nags Head's pretty smart, and we're forerunner in a lot of things. Duck was smarter than we were. When they put that sidewalk in, immediately they put a 1 cent maintenance tax just to repair the duck walks. And that's where their maintenance has come from. It's an item right there. It's a line item, and that's where their money comes from. We have got miles and miles and miles of the beach road, beach access. It goes all the way down to South Nags Head, and now we start at 8th Street. We're heading on down south. Hopefully one day I'll live long enough to see it, where it'll be all the way down to Wellborn Junction, and hopefully connect with the other path that's supposed to go up the Sound. If you put a penny in a line item, you have maintenance there. And I think Ralph, if he were allowed to speak right now, could tell you that he can use every bit of that penny every year in maintenance of our parks and recreation. And that recreation committee worked for months on the report that Susie's talking about, and we did adopt it. And that is one of the things that the town people can actually see and use, are those playgrounds and those walkways. It's something that a lot of towns don't have, but you know what? We've always had a higher level of service here, and we've also had a higher level of amenities for the people who live in Nags Head, and it comes back to us in many ways. So that said, the 37 and a half hours, I agree totally with Susie. We had, if you came to the budget meeting, you heard, I was on the line. I think, you know, if you work an hour, you pay for an hour. It was explained to the people that were here that day, as well as us. There are many workers that work over the 37 and a half hours. Many. And in particular, Public Works. You either keep this as it is, and it has worked since the town was incorporated, or you start paying dearly for that overtime. And I went home that night and I did a lot of figuring, because I am one, you know, you work, you get paid. Many of our employees work longer hours than 40 hours a week, and they do not get paid overtime. So I say you leave that alone. And the last thing I want to say is reevaluation, and this is the county, not the town. Reevaluation needs to be done a whole lot more often than 8 years. We've all been shocked at the reduction of the values townwide, and it throws a kelter in my budget as well as yours when reevaluation comes. It's a hard pill to swallow. So it's nothing we can do about it except to try to pick up and go on. And like I said, the citizens can either implore us to cut the services, cut staff, or we're going to have to pay for it. So that's all I have to say.
Mr. Sadler, I would like to,
Correct me?
well, on the overtime, if employees work overtime for us, they do get paid overtime.
If they, no, not if they are,
Exempt.
Not police or fire, I
Yes,
understand.
yeah.
But everybody else, we do pay overtime because it's illegal not to.
Actually, police and fire do as well if they work longer than their prescribed hours.
Thank you. Commissioner Green?
No budget is perfect. There are things about this budget that I don't like, although I must admit to the manager that this was a much better presentation this year than I have seen, and less frustrating, so I commend you on making the process somewhat smoother this year. I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
There are things that I think that we didn't have quite as much discussion about as I would have liked. School resource officer being one of them, because I think there's, all the schools are important, and I think it would have been nice to have had communication with all the towns in the county about how we're going to fund 5 elementary school resource officers, not just the one in Nags Head. Because I think every parent would agree that their child is the most important. And I think that we did not take a look at the whole issue comprehensively as a community. And I think that that's, we talk about wanting to work together, but I don't see us really doing that. I think that we need to walk the walk and take a look at those things, and let everybody participate in our school system, not just Nags Head putting an officer in, or the sheriff trying to find money for 4 schools but can't get it for the 5th school. So I think that we really need to be more community-oriented, not isolated. And I do have an issue with that. I understand your comments about the 40 hours. Just a clarification, the employees do get paid for 40 hours and work 37 and a half for those extra 2.5 hours as gap time. It's not, they don't get paid for 37 and a half, they get paid for 40. And that's why there's not as much overtime as there is, because there is that gap time that takes care of that. The other thing that I've heard comments about is about the townwide beach nourishment fund. And I've heard lots of talk about the west side. That proposed tax goes townwide, not just west side. So the people in the MSD that are paying the same amount as was assessed initially will be part of that also townwide tax. It's not just a west side tax, it is a townwide tax. So I don't want anybody to start thinking that only the west side is going to get hit with that. Everybody pays and is included in that. And I think that we are thinking about the future with keeping that fund where it is. No budget is going to be satisfactory to everybody up here on the board. There's going to be things that we like individually and things that we don't like collectively, and things that we can all support. I think our fund balance, we have, as Commissioner Walter said, developed a policy, but it doesn't take long to expend that money when you have an Isabel that theoretically was a Category 1, which really wasn't a Category 1, but that's how it ended up. I mean, I sat there during that storm and had to make a decision about spending $1.4 million to run a water line that you didn't know was going to get approved by FEMA to come back. And if it collapsed, you'd spend another $1.4 million to dig the second line. So it doesn't take much of that to expend $5 million, not knowing if you're going to get it reimbursed or not get it reimbursed. And we've seen in the past how we've had to fight to get reimbursements during Isabel, and we've seen that we did not get a declaration for Irene that we should have gotten because they didn't really want to count the sand that we lost. So life is not always fair when it comes to money you think you're going to get back. So I think we as a board have to think about how best to prepare our town financially for things that are beyond our control. As far as parks and path, I'm one that sits up here and complains every year about maintenance of our paths. Ralph can tell you that. He's heard it from me constantly. I think that the $50,000 or so that we're spending to repair the path this year will get us to a certain point, but it won't fix everything that we have to repair. And I think that as we add paths, that number is only going to get larger. And while I think you're right, you can only stretch an existing budget so far. The more you add, you cannot keep saying it's going to come out of your operating budget without adding a stream to pay for it. We're committed to extending paths, but I think we also have to be committed to the maintenance and repair of those paths. So I've had a lot of heartburn about whether or not I was going to vote for this budget. But I think because I may not like a piece or two of it, doesn't mean that I should vote against the whole thing.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other comments from the board?
I would
Yes,
like just to make one. I didn't comment on the resource officer position. And, you know, initially I had some heartburn about that position. However, this will still be a Nags Head police officer. There is an MOU that would establish the relationship between the Board of Education and our board with regards to oversight of that officer and what the officer does and does not do. I hope there will be more than just some grant writing, but some other duties that the officer can perform also while in the school, and also have the ability to respond if needed, you know, to other areas. And I do believe that the summer beach patrol person last year, I think we found real value in that. I think we headed off a lot of conflicts within our community by having that person on the beach. I believe all the comments about that position were positive, and I prefer that we have someone who is going to provide knowledge to our citizens about our rules and ordinances versus just, you know, writing somebody a ticket, because you can ruin a vacation real quick like that. And we want our citizens to come back, and everybody loves their dogs, and they love them as much as their kids sometimes. So, you know, that's an important thing too, and that was one of the issues we were having. So, as presented regarding the school resource officer, I do support that position. There may be some opportunity in the future to work collectively with the county. They do already provide officers, school resource officers in all middle and high schools and to elementary schools, one in Manio and one in Hatters, I believe. So, but at this point, I do believe again, it comes down to values and what your community wants and expects. And I think we will see a real value from that position, not only during the school year, but also during the summer.
Thank you. We do have the proposed budget on the screen, and I think it's time to entertain a motion.
Move to adopt the budget as proposed.
Second?
We have a motion on the floor, we have a second. Is there further discussion?
Just one question I would like to ask of the town manager for those who are listening perhaps and can't, or not watching. Can you just give us a total town budget and keep the water funds separate, and then say one more time this proposed budget's tax rate for the town?
Yes, ma'am. This budget, if adopted, will have a town tax rate of 25.7 cents. And do you have a copy of the? Yep, thank you. Total general fund expenditures of $18,327,000. Total revenue fund expenditures of $2,816,586.
Do you want to break out the, again, the municipal service district?
The ad valorem taxes in the total $5,855,000, municipal service district taxes $1,792,000.
Okay.
Further discussion? Any other questions, ma'am? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Aye. Motion passes 4-1. Y'all, it is, we are approaching the time. It's 11:15. We do have a dedication of our new park down at Whalebone. Would like to invite everybody to join us down there. We're going to call a recess from now until...
I think the ribbon cutting would last maybe 30 minutes at the most.
12:45. Suit everybody to be back after lunch? Okay, we're going to stand in recess until 12:45.
12:45.
And proceed with business. And our next item is public hearing number 2 to consider the preliminary assessment resolution adopted on May 1st, 2013 concerning the street assessment project for West Carolina Circle. Don, I don't expect a lot of public comment at this one.
I suspect not, but we do need to hold a public hearing in order to, for the board to consider the final assessment resolution, and at this time, we will begin the public hearing to consider the assessment resolution regarding the West Carolinian Circle Improvement Project. We'll begin by having a presentation regarding the project provided by Planning Director Elizabeth Teague.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the Board of Commission. In this public hearing, we're asking for you to consider comment and the information in your packet regarding improvements to West Carolinian Circle and the ability for the town to make an assessment to adjacent property owners for the costs of those improvements. It is noted that the town of Nags Head is an adjacent property owner as well, and we previously brought before you your permission to participate in this process. I know we have one of the property owners here in the audience with us. I'm not sure that I see any others, but I'm happy to answer any questions about the resolution or the Carolinian Circle project moving forward.
Any questions for Mrs. Teague? All right, thank you. At this time, does any member of the public wish to comment on the proposed assessment resolution?
Hello, my name is Tony Parker. I live at 201 West Carolinian Circle, and of course I'm here to speak for this action. And which is already been demonstrated by my signing off on the request to have myself and my neighbors assessed. And I would say that the absence of my other neighbors is an indication that they are absolutely for this and have no problems, as we have all signed off on the assessment. And mainly, I just wanted to say thank you to each and every one of you for working on this project, for allowing it to happen. It's been a long time coming. Looking forward to the improvement in the creation of a community in my tiny little neighborhood. And I also want to give a special thanks to the Town of Nags Head staff, in particular Elizabeth Teague, for helping our neighbors, myself and my neighbors, all come together and unanimously make this request of this of the town. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Would any other member of the public like to comment on the assessment resolution or this project? Last chance. Does the board wish to receive anything further before we conclude the public hearing? If not, we will conclude the public hearing and the board may begin its consideration of the assessment resolution. I will point out for the board that the proposed resolution before you has one thing that you need to discuss and make a decision on. Assuming that you want to adopt the resolution regarding the project, the board needs to decide when the first installment, for those who will use the installment method, when the first installment will be due. It can be on either the date when property taxes are due or 60 days after the date that the assessment roll is confirmed. And you simply need to select one option or the other when you approve the resolution, and that is, those two options are both recited in paragraph 4 of the resolution.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Do we have to discuss it or just make a motion?
Just need, a motion is sufficient.
Well, I'd like to make a motion, make a motion, if everybody's in favor, that to do it at the same time that property taxes are due.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second. Further discussion?
Do we need to determine where our money will come from, or do that after this is passed?
No.
I think after this is passed, this is the only real
Okay.
choice that we've
Yeah.
got right now. Everybody fine with when property taxes are due versus 60 days? Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. The motion passes unanimously. Our next public hearing is a public hearing to consider a site plan amendment submitted by Quibel and Associates on behalf of Rosemeyer for a 4,000 square foot expansion to the Outer Banks Mall to accommodate a new food store.
All right, at this time, we will begin the public hearing to consider the site plan amendment that was submitted by Quibel and Associates on behalf of Rosemeyer Corporation. I would like to point out that in this matter, the board sits as a quasi-judicial body, and as a result, anybody who's going to present information regarding this particular matter, this potential site plan amendment, will need to be sworn by the clerk in order to provide evidence for the board to consider. And so at this time, anyone who will be providing information for the board to consider on this, if you will please approach the town clerk so that you may receive the oath.
Carolyn, you have to get another Bible. That's all there is to it.
We do. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'll open the public hearing and we'll begin with the presentation of the staff's analysis provided by Zoning Administrator Kelly Wyatt.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. The site plan is being requested by Quibel and Associates on behalf of Nags Head Company, LLC, for the purpose of expanding to the north side of what was C-Mark. It's now Tuesday morning. Expanding that to the north by about 4,000 square feet for a food store. It's proposed to be a fresh market. In addition, there's going to be some mechanical equipment included, some coolers and whatnot also on the northern side. The shopping center is located at 5,000 South Croatan Highway, and it is zoned appropriately for a food store. The property is not located within a flood zone, therefore the proposed addition does not have to be elevated or any type of floodplain management. Because the site is within the village at Nags Head, lot coverage is calculated a little bit differently than everywhere else within the town. 80% of the area within the entire C1 district may be covered between the site plan that's been provided by Quibel and as-built surveys that we pulled for the BB&T Bank and the Eye Care Center. When you take those numbers and include the proposed addition, they come to 77.4% lot coverage, so there's still compliant lot coverage. The proposed height of the expansion is right at 35 feet, which is their maximum, so we're going to require both an under construction height certificate as well as a final height certificate, just to make sure they're compliant. Architectural design is not required either by the town or by the village architectural review committee. Beyond that, they have provided several design elements that the town desires. They have rafter tails, column trim, and some shutters that are shown. So even though it's not required, they have incorporated those elements. Several years ago, the Planning Board and the Board of Commissioners recommended and adopted a text amendment relating to the parking standard for shopping centers with over 25,000 square feet of gross floor area. And essentially what that done is it allowed you to only park the areas that were customer accessible. Instead of by gross floor, it was customer accessible. So as you look on the site plan provided by Quibel, you'll see a breakdown of the customer accessible area within the entire Outer Banks Mall. So with that in mind, they have adequate parking, even additional parking for the Fresh Market proposal. No additional landscaping or buffering is going to be required for this. Lighting and signage have both been reviewed and approved by planning staff. This development, being that it is in the village, it is served by a wastewater facility. Utilities Inc. has provided, since the planning board meeting, Utilities Inc. has provided a willing and able letter stating that they are willing and able to accept that capacity. They do want to continue doing some analysis, but they have stated that they're able to do that. Stormwater management and traffic circulation have been reviewed and approved by the town engineer. The fire department has reviewed and approved the plans, and as always, the construction will have to comply with the fire prevention code. Public Works Department has reviewed and approved the plans. Planning staff finds that the proposal is consistent with the zoning ordinance and recommends approval of the site plan amendment. And at their May 21st meeting, the planning board recommended unanimously approval given the letter from Utilities Inc., which we now have. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and we have Mike Strader with Quibel and Lois Williams with Rosemere here.
Does the board have any questions for Ms. Wyatt? All right. Thank you very much. Ms. Teague.
Thank you. I did want to jump in here because since the staff report, some additional information has come to us, and that is a concern of the hospital that this project not interfere with the flight path of the emergency helicopter. I believe a representative from the hospital is here to speak on that. We've made introductions between their engineering firm and the hospital staff, and we will try our best to coordinate even as early on at the pre-construction conferences, coordinating how that project's going to move forward with the hospital's okay. And I will add that there is some additional mechanical equipment that will go on the roof, which will require a crane for a short period of time. Mr. Strader, their engineer, can speak more to that if you have any further questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Teague? All right. Thank you. All right. At this time, Mr. Strader or anyone on behalf of the applicant may present information for the board to consider in support of this application.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Michael Strader. I'm an engineer at Quibel & Associates, the civil engineer of record for the Outer Banks Mall. And Lois Williams represents the owner, the Rosemire Corporation. She's also present. On behalf of the Rosemire Corporation, the site plan amendment submitted before you requests an approval of an approximate 4,000 square foot expansion to the Outer Banks Mall. And as Kelly has already mentioned, this is a by right use, and it meets all the dimensional and parking space requirements set forth by the ordinance. And this particular area of expansion has been shown as a future development area since the initial site plan approval of the Outer Banks Mall. And therefore, the stormwater runoff has been accounted for since that time. Stormwater management is provided by an existing detention pond, which is located on the adjacent parcel owned by the Outer Banks Hospital. And storage is provided for approximately 5 inches of stormwater runoff, which is in excess of the 10-year, 2-hour storm event of 4.3 inches. Wastewater is directed to the village at Nags Head wastewater treatment facility, and we have since acquired a willingness to serve letter from Carolina Water Utilities, Inc., verifying their receipt of the flow. As Ms. Teague has mentioned, we are now in contact with the hospital, and we're more than willing to provide all building plans, and are definitely open to communication to verify that we certainly want to encourage participation during the pre-construction meeting, but furthermore, actually before then, so that we can verify all compliance with the FAA. I'll be glad to try to address any technical questions that you folks may have.
All right, does the board have any questions for Mr. Strader? Yes, Ms. Walters.
I just have one, and I know you're going to be in communication with the hospital, but regarding the crane and the landing of the helicopter, during that time, can a flashing light or something be placed at the top of the crane while it's in use?
Yeah, we'd certainly be open to, and we don't have a general contractor awarded the contract yet, but that is certainly something that we can make a condition for whoever that contractor may be, because that's a very good suggestion. And at any point in time when a crane is to be used, we certainly need to communicate when those times may be with the hospital. I drove by there during our intermission and saw for myself how close it was. And although there is an existing building in closer proximity, about 24 foot from the property line, and our proposed expansion is going to be no closer than about 80 foot from that property line, our height is higher, so we certainly want to ensure the helicopter pad is available and meets all FAA requirements at all times.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, I did have one.
Yes, ma'am.
Following up on Susie's question, is it going to be, in your opinion, would the crane be left overnight? Does it have a signal at the top? Do the cranes have a signal at the top?
My understanding at this point is that the time when that crane will actually be needed is going to be when the units are placed on top of the building. And that, from what I'm hearing at the moment, is basically less than a 1-day time period. So that crane should be able to be brought down to grade and not left up overnight.
Right, okay, that helps. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Any further information on behalf of the applicant? Ms. Williams, did you want to say anything? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anything from the planning board on this matter?
Nothing in addition to what Ms. White has presented.
All right, thank you. All right, at this time, does anybody else who is sworn wish to comment on this or provide evidence for the board to consider? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Chuck Winters. I'm Director of Support Operations at the Outer Banks Hospital, and Ronnie and Todd's asked me to come over here today and voice a couple concerns. I think Michael has already talked about them. I think we can work through the construction end of that pretty easily. The bigger issue with the hospital is the pad, and whether FAA would have a problem with another building being built there. I talked to the pilots who were over during the break, and they voiced some concern that the last fly-in they had of the FA, they had mentioned it's tight already. This before we ever knew about anything about the addition going on. Obviously, the hospital doesn't want to get themselves in a situation. This is built, the next inspector who flies in says, the pad's too close. You have to move it. That doesn't help the community at all, because if they shut us down, then nobody goes out of the hospital. And obviously, the hospital would not want to incur the cost of moving the pad someplace else on the property. So those are the concerns of the hospital at this time. I do ask that Michael gets me all the plans and everything so we can take a better look at it, if he could do that. But those are the two biggest concerns that we're worried about.
All right, any questions for Mr. Winters?
I do.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Winters, we spoke earlier, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding. There is a building closer to the hospital than the expansion that's proposed. So your concern is not that the expansion is going to be the closest, but is it the height?
It's the height.
It's the height,
Yes,
okay.
ma'am. Yeah. There is a building closer, but the building going in is probably 15, 20 feet higher. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Mr.
How
Hu.
long would it take to get something from the FAA to clarify?
I don't have a clue. I think maybe me and Michael, if we put our heads together, we can try to make that happen faster. And also our pilots who have a relationship with the FAA can make that probably happen faster too, to try to get a clarification.
You've raised a concern that causes me a great deal of angst, given our community and our dependence on the helicopter.
But I spoke to the chief pilot earlier when he was here, and the chief pilot, again, I'm not getting in their business. They'll get it all checked out, but they're not gonna have a problem with that. And if they do, they'll deal with it, that's all.
He had a map of the buffer that's required, and it was clearly inside that buffer. And when I explained to him, it was 42 feet additional length, no additional height. He felt like it wasn't going to be a problem. But we have his contact information, and we'll include him
That's
in on
something that
this.
they'll all have to work out, but Chad said there's not gonna be an issue.
All right. Further questions? Anything else, Mr. Winters?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you. Would anybody else like to provide? Yes, sir, Mr. Toth. Did you also take the oath, sir? Okay. If you'll please obtain the oath when you get up to the podium from the town clerk.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
If you'll please use the podium so we can get your comments recorded.
Yeah, hi, Louis Toth again. I'm concerned about the helicopter when subject was introduced. I know at night there's a heck of a lot of helicopters in and out of that pad. I mean, I almost went from there. Other people were flying in and out. They come in mainly at night, and it's hard to do a helicopter at night, particularly when you got storms. So having a tall 35-foot building, I think, is going to be a problem. And if, God forbid, if you get an accident, you're going to have, for sure, you're going to have a lot of people dead. That's all I say. I would really look at the FDA and experienced pilots who are flying at night. They have to have a heck of a lot of lights on the darn thing to be able to land in their storms. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else who wishes to present information at this time? Anything further from the applicant, Mr. Strader? Anything further from staff?
Just to add that the building height limit is 35 feet. And what they are doing in the expansion is to continue the roof line. So the building height that's being added is 15 feet, is that right, Michael? Well, it's going from the ground to another 35 feet over a certain distance. So when we talk about a high building, just please keep it in perspective that it's 35 feet, which is the town standard.
Any questions for Ms. T? All right, does the board wish to receive any other evidence before it begins its consideration of this application? All right. Do you wish to? Yes, sir. Have you already taken the oath, sir? Okay, yes, sir.
My name's Terry Evans. I live on 405 Sandpiper Terrace over in the Cove. I joined the 14th fairway. I'm about 350 yards from that landing pad. My house is 65 feet in the air. They come right smack over top of it, about 300 feet, low enough that I can see the pilot talking on the microphone. And if my house is not a problem, I don't see where there's going to be any problem with this. And as having 2,000 hours of flying time in the Air Force, as long as they light that thing up at night, it's just like the power lines and the poles that are all along that road. It's not going to be that much more difficult for them to come in if it has to be up at night. But my wife is here. She sat here the whole morning and can't be here this afternoon. We'd love to see this store come in. And not only for the extra revenue to the town, but you've got Harris Teeter that is undergoing negotiations now, which probably means they're going to get sold, and we don't know what's going to come in. It could be a Publix, it could be a Super Value. We just don't know what it's going to be. And this store, and we've been in this store many times, it is a fantastic, nice store, and it gives you a wonderful alternative to just going to a Food Line or going into a Harris Teeter. And I think it'd be great for the people that come and visit us in the summertime to have that alternative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. All right, before we close the public hearing, is there any further comment from the public?
He has a tall house.
Does the board wish to receive any other evidence? If not, we will now conclude the public hearing to consider this site plan amendment, and the board may begin its deliberations on that application.
And since this is a conditional use, we'll have to have the findings of fact, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was
I
a
didn't say
site
that
plan.
correctly,
It's
did
a
I?
site plan amendment,
Site
so.
plan.
You can present, actually, it can be approved as presented, it can be approved with certain specified conditions, or it can be denied. It can also be tabled.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve as presented.
We have a motion? I'll second the motion. For discussion, purposes of discussion. Further discussion? Commissioner Welch?
Well, I know from past history that this expansion space has been there since the store was built in '83. So it's always been there. It's always been available for expansion on that site. My only concern really is just the FAA. I would like to know that is approved moving forward. But I think it would be a good addition to our community.
Yeah, I just want to follow up. It's which comes first, the chicken or the egg? And this expansion has been proposed since they came on board. But I too want to make sure that we have a flight pattern that will continue to be available and unobstructed. So I'm not suggesting that be a part of this, but we need to get resolution as soon as possible to make sure that that is not going to interfere with what we have in existence already. And Doug, from what you've said, I don't think it's going to be, but I think there needs to be some documentation.
Well, first of all, they're already on board. The chief pilot was here. He's already on board. He came up and said, after he looked at the site plan, he doesn't have an issue, but they will stay in contact. So it's going to be done. It's not going to be something that they're going to say, well, the heck with Dare Med Flight, we'll go ahead and do it. They're working together to get it done. It's not an issue. It's a non-issue.
See, I wasn't privileged to that, so I'm not aware of what he said. So that is my only concern, because I too feel that it will be an asset to the neighborhood and certainly to Outer Banks Mall.
Mr. Green?
Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously. The next item is a public hearing to consider adoption of zoning ordinance text amendments submitted by Mr. Andy McCann of Nags Head Fishing Pier to amend Town Code Section 48-167 parentheses 3 as it relates to parking requirements by pier length, and to Town Code Section 48-163D as it relates to dimensional requirements for parking stalls.
All right, at this time, we'll begin the public hearing to consider the zoning ordinance text amendments cited by the mayor. On this matter, the board sits as a legislative body and therefore can receive information without it being in the form of sworn testimony. We'll begin with the public hearing by receiving the staff's analysis presented by Planning Director Elizabeth Teague.
Good afternoon again, and Kelly Wyatt and I may tag team on this presentation as well. Mr. McCann brought in this zoning ordinance text amendment. This is to Town Code Section 48-167.3 and 48-163D as they relate to parking requirements of fishing piers and the dimensional requirements of parking spaces themselves, respectively. At the May 22nd Planning Board meeting, the Planning Board recommended 4-3 to recommend adoption of the proposed text amendment reducing parking stall dimension from 10 by 20 to 9 by 18 or 9 by 20 as proposed, and then 6-1 to recommend adoption of the proposed text amendment to reduce the parking standard for fishing piers with regard to pier length from 1 space per 10 linear feet to 1 space per 20 linear feet of pier, but only for those piers that are less than 800 feet in length. Staff concurs with the Planning Board's conclusions, and in our analysis, there were sort of two fundamental themes going on, each related to the text amendments. Mr. McCann asked that if we can't approve both text amendments, that the board consider these separately. That was the approach that the Planning Board opted to take, and so I'll handle each one as individual. First, I'll address the issue of parking requirements by pier length. Mr. McCann believes that current trends for pier use for fishing indicate that the parking requirement for pier length in his situation is too stringent. The current requirement is to have 1 space for every 10 linear feet of fishing pier, and their records indicate that about half that parking is necessary. It's important to note that fishing piers have to keep records and address fishing, number of catches, and keep records for the amount of pier that they have over water. That data is attached to your planning board packet, and you can see a significant reduction in fishing, in catching. And Mr. McCann's personal experience is that over the years, fishing use of that pier has reduced significantly. In individual interviews and then in participation with the planning board, Mr. Gary Oliver also provided information that he felt like he's seeing the same experience. In other words, his pier is not getting used as much for fishing. Similarly, however, when we invited and asked Mr. Remage, the Jeanette's Pier Director, for his experience, he actually, of course, they have a shorter experience to go by. They are seeing a very steady fishing use of the pier. So in the discussion, it became clear that the shorter piers are experiencing a reduction in use of the pier for fishing. And so the parking demand that's associated with those pier uses may be placing a burden on these two shorter piers. With this change in ordinance, what this would mean was that the parking that is currently now in the parking lot of the Nags Head Pier could be reallocated towards use of the pier house. The other part of the pier parking requirement is that in addition to the 1 space per every 10 linear feet, you also have to park 1 space for every 200 square feet of pier house use under roof. Together, this is creating a burden that's limiting a desired expansion on the part of the Nags Head Pier. I do not see Mr. Oliver here today, but he did share at the planning board meeting and in his interview with me that's reflected in your staff report that he is concerned about the town changing ordinances generally. He's concerned that this reduction might apply to Jeanette's Pier, in which case, they still have that parking demand for fishing, and they have a steady parking demand that's tied to a variety of uses, and it might not be fair in his interpretation. He also added that he would support this application as long as it applied to the shorter piers, but didn't apply to Jeanette's Pier. The Nags Head Pier, in the second part of my presentation, the Nags Head Pier is also non-conforming in terms of parking stalls, the actual size of the individual parking spaces. The town standard is 10 by 20. A lot of other jurisdictions use 9 by 20 or 9 by 18. That often depends on the drive aisle and the turning radius that you need to get into a parking stall. While this part of his text amendment would be helpful to him, it wouldn't necessarily bring his site into full conformity because he has smaller spaces than even 9 by 18. But it should be noted that really that's kind of what everyone feels comfortable with in terms of this text amendment. What brought these two requests forward was a desire by Mr. McCann to expand his pair house, as was noted before. However, since it's a text amendment, we don't want necessarily site plans to drive rules, right? The rules have to apply across the board equally. However, we did create we do have the site plan here with us, and we do have some technical information based on what's there now and the parking that he would need to do the expansion that he would like to do. I'll let Kelly fill you in on some of those details, but staff's conclusion, both from talking with the pier managers and owners, the planning board members, and driving around and parking in different parking spaces, is that we believe the town could support both of these applications. We certainly would support both of these text amendments. We certainly want to do anything we can to create flexibility for our piers. Mr. Oliver did add that, at one time there were 33 up and down the coast of North Carolina, and now there's only 19 left. So anything we can do to support our two local piers that have been with us for a long time, that are finding themselves struggling somewhat, would be helpful. From a planning standpoint, it does seem fair that from time to time you have to reevaluate your parking standards and your other land use standards. And when you have uses where the parking demand is seeing a demonstrable decrease, it makes sense that we might want to look at that standard again. However, staff recognizes that the longer pier is not seeing that decrease in parking demand. So we support this idea and put forward the idea that the change in text from one parking space for every 10 feet of linear feet to one space for every 20 feet makes sense, but only for the shorter piers. That's why the text amendment is presented to you as it is from the planning board. On the second one, where it requires where we're talking about the parking stall dimension, we also believe that the town could support and should support this. However, we understand that that affects lots of parking lots. That was a standard. We tried to go back and figure out when that standard was put in place, and it's in there probably back into the 70s. Of course, back then, cars were a lot bigger than they are now. They're getting bigger. But generally, the standard practice from the Planning Association, North Carolina Planning Association, American Planning Association, and the American Institute of Architects, they recommend sort of a 9 by 18 or 9 by 20 standard. Again, the length being dictated by drive aisle. That said, the planning board is about to go through a process of updating your parking ordinances, and this is one item that they're going to look at very closely. So we would certainly understand if you didn't at this time want to take action on that. but we do ask for consideration of the linear pier footage, because that would certainly help Mr. McCann go forward with his desire to expand his pier house. I'm happy to answer questions on what I've presented, and then again, Kelly is here to provide you some details on the actual site plan and Mr. McCann's plans and the parking the existing building and parking what's proposed, if that would help you.
Commissioner Cahoon.
Elizabeth, I have no issue about the pier length and 1 per 10. My question deals with more as why we wouldn't deal with parking holistically throughout the town instead of piecemealing it.
That's actually our intention. The planning board has a subcommittee. They've been working on stormwater. They're taking up parking at their next meeting, which has been scheduled for Monday. And we just haven't gotten to it yet. In the meantime, Mr. McCann's come forward with this request, so we wanted to honor it.
And the other question I have is, what I've observed in other localities is that they delineate a certain amount of parking as compact car and not apply the same broad standard to the whole parking lot. And I don't see any of that mentioned either in the planning board minutes or in your report.
That has actually come up in part of our parking discussions, and it was in the staff report to the planning board where we were laying out the items that we want the planning board to look at in terms of the parking ordinance. It's a great idea. You're right in that other jurisdictions use that. What you see is, even though an area may be labeled compact cars, often everybody parks there. And so you get big oversized cars in smaller spaces. But it is very much a good consideration, and possibly one solution to a situation like this could be some percentage of the parking lot, allowing some percentage for compact parking. It's a very good approach.
Mayor.
We are considering reducing the parking standard by half. Are you saying that it seems like the proportion on a larger pier, you're saying that the demand is double on a larger pier than on a smaller pier?
Yeah, there's actually a couple of different things at work here. First are the specifics of Jeanette's Pier. It's a state facility. We all know what an attraction it is to visitors. But it was also further east than the other two piers to begin with. So it started with an advantageous footprint compared to the other piers. So its pier actually starts over water. The other two piers, particularly Sense Beach Nourishment, their pier isn't starting over water anymore. They've got 30 to 50 feet, or depending on the tide, they've got a good chunk of their pier over the beach now. So it eliminates that amount for fishing. The other thing that's happening is with the shorter piers, they're not reaching the deep water. So while there are still viable fishing opportunities, they're not reaching the bigger fish or the deeper water like Jeanette's Pier is. So Jeanette's Pier, in terms of a fisherman, in some circumstances, may be more desirable than the two shorter piers. I will add, though, Nags Head Pier and Outer Banks Pier, because of their historic nature, they have a real tie to the community. And we heard sort of comments about how people come back and back. You know, they fished there as little kids, and now they're bringing their grandkids. And so there will always be a desire to use and fish those piers. But what we're seeing, and again, it's a documented trend, is that not as many people are fishing off those shorter piers, and certainly those piers are trying to adjust their business model to sustain themselves.
I understand where you are with that. It just, we're using a ratio, though, for parking, and we're reducing the parking by half, and you're kind of telling me that another 200 feet on the pier doubles the amount of fishing, is what I'm hearing. And I guess I'd probably prefer to see us treat all of them equally. But
Yes, Commissioner Sadler.
To follow up just a little bit on what the mayor is saying, I will tell you that I since returning, I did get some figures which blew my mind as far as Jeanette's Pier. There were over, and again, the parking lot is counted. They don't go out and count each person. They have this formula, as you know. They had last year over 900,000 guests in the parking area. Now, did they all go on and fish? No, there were 330-some thousand that actually went out on the pier. Those numbers are staggering, and I am sure that Mr. Oliver and Mr. McCann both would love to have a portion of those people. Saying that, you know, in our good intentions with beach nourishment, we probably did something not so good to the two older piers, and that was we did take up some of their fishing grounds. I know that the little trout sloughs and the puppy drum sloughs no longer exist at certain tides in Gary's Pier or Andy's. And I am convinced that they do have, I've looked at the numbers, they do have lesser people. While Jeanette's Pier does not have an empty space most any day. In fact, I think today we even saw some other areas where those people park. Saying that, I don't have a problem with shortening the pier requirements. I understand that that in order to stay in business, since they have both become lesser fishing piers, there'll always be people that go back to both of those piers.
Right,
So because
absolutely.
it is what my dad did and his dad and on and on. To stay in business, both of these gentlemen have had to come up with alternative attractions for their visitors. And saying that I think that they've both worked very hard to keep numbers there to stay in business. If I'm correct, the apartments and the restaurant and all of the other necessary parking spaces at the Nags Head Pier are adequate. And if this text amendment is approved, then that pier would be conforming to the parking that he needs.
A clarification on that, you're partially correct. The important sort of nuance, and Mr. McCann's, part of the reason for his text amendment is that he's actually short a few places for what he's doing now as it exists. Normally, when we have a nonconformity and someone wants to add in additional space, we make them park for the addition. So for him to park for that addition, he needs 7 more spaces. But that said, he's still short some spaces in the existing parking lot. However, with this text amendment, he would come into conformity. Just so you're right, but I just wanted to be clear about that because he's not conforming now.
Okay, but if this text amendment is passed, he would then come into conformity, with the exception of perhaps some of the sizes of his parking spots, which exist in many of the older establishments up and down the beach. Some have smaller spaces than what we now require.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
And his parking lot hasn't changed in years. So.
Yeah, okay.
All right, any other questions for Mrs. Teague? Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Was the original request, did that include the 800 feet restriction?
No, that was actually something that came out of staff interviews with Mr. Oliver and Mr. Remage, and then planning board discussion. That was a recommendation that we gave the planning board that option to consider, and they took it. And I will add again, if you want to talk more about the specifics of Mr. McCann's plans for expansion of the pier house, Kelly Wyatt can provide you that information. Of course, Mr. McCann is here himself.
Any other questions for Mrs. Teague? Does the board wish to ask Ms. Wyatt any questions? All right, if not, we'll go to Mr. McCann, if you want to go ahead and present some information for the board to consider, if any. Yes, sir.
Mayor, commissioners, town staff. If you need any information, I'll try to provide it for you. I'm just trying to put up an open pavilion type thing with maybe some drop-down curtains. It's not going to be like it's not going to be like a heated, air-conditioned facility. I'm just trying to come up with some kind of ways to make some revenue to help offset the loss from when Jeanette's Pier's opened up. There's just no way we can compete with Jeanette's Pier. I mean, I don't know how many variances they got when they built that place, but I mean, they got anything they wanted. And that's one reason we have such a loss of business. If they had to build to the same specifications that we are held by, we wouldn't have that problem. But they were allowed to do whatever they wanted to down there, evidently, or build this huge thing over top of water. My 5,000 square feet is going to be maxed out. That's camel. That's the biggest thing I can have down there. It's 5,000 square foot a footprint. And it's going to be basically it's going to be a waiting area for my restaurant, because right now, if it rains and blows, people don't wait. They just don't even come in. So I'm trying to give them a more comfortable area to wait in, especially since they passed the cigarette ban now. It's people still smoke and they still want to go somewhere they can. It gives them a place to go out there and sit. So, is there anything else I can?
Any questions for Mr. McCann?
Address the parking issues. The pier was built in 1947, so that's all the parking, concrete, everything was there since 1947, except a little loss here and there from storms. Ash Wednesday. I mean, I've been through all of them. And that's my records go back 30 years. Well, 29. I've been there 29 years. That pier has been Gary's family about the same amount of time. And of course, Jeanette's is what, 3 years old now? So his records may not go back as far as ours do. And we don't have their advertising budget. We don't, I mean, Buster's on some radio station just about once a week talking up the aquarium and the pier. And they don't even have to pay for that either, because that's a community service. If I do that, I gotta pay for it.
Commissioner Walters?
Do you have additional parking across the street?
I do have additional parking across the street. The very back of that parking is dedicated as a septic repair area. There's nothing back there now, it's just gravel. And in order to use that as parking, I mean, I would have to do something about the septic, or if I add back there, I would have to do setbacks, a retention pond, and all kind of things that would to make it up to today's standards.
So even with that additional parking across the street, you're still not you're still non-conforming?
The line parking, the hard surface parking, is figured into what I have now. Now, I could probably take my dumpsters, move and get a couple more parking places that way, but that would make it harder on the trash trucks and things like that.
Commissioner Cahoon?
Andy, question for you. If we were to adopt today the reduction in the requirements per length of pier, that would go ahead and help solve your problem?
But my parking would still be, but that would.
But that would decrease the number of spaces you would need?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. McCann? Anything further, sir?
Not me.
All right, thank you, Andy.
I got,
yes, sir.
Brandon Reclamation. Rob Stevenson.
Hello, my name's Rob Stevenson. For 35 years, I owned and managed a civil engineering surveying firm in Tidewater, Virginia, specifically in Virginia Beach. Before I go any further, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank staff for their help on this item. I've had the opportunity to serve with many planning departments up and down literally the East Coast. And these two ladies here that you have working for you have done as good a job and fine a job as any place I've ever been. And thank you both for that. But as far as parking goes, every jurisdiction up in Tidewater, all the 8 cities up there, I've been in every one of them, and the parking requirements are 9 by 18. Yours are 10 by 20. You require a 22-foot drive aisle and then another 10 by 20. So overall, parking space, drive aisle parking space is 62 feet. Most other places require 9 by 18, a 24-foot, and a 9 by 18, so they're 60 feet wide versus your 62. So your space is not only 1 foot wider width-wise, it's 2 foot wider in depth, if you'll, one by depth. During the 90s, I probably did 50 or 60 Walmarts across the country, up and down the East Coast. In the Carolinas, Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania. One in New Jersey, I only made that mistake once. All the requirements were typically 9 by 18 with a 24-foot drive aisle. You know, if you think about it, 10 by 20 is 200 square feet. 9 by 18 is 162 square feet. That's 38-foot difference, 19% less. If you happen to go to the outlet mall and count the number of parking spaces from north to south, there's over 90 of them. If the requirement had been for a 9 by 18 versus 10 by 20, that parking lot could be 100 feet shorter than it is, 100 foot. Your stormwater management, chapter 38, one of the first few bullets says, we will do everything possible to eliminate stormwater runoff to ditches, sounds, and ocean. And yet you have the largest parking space requirement I've ever seen. Those two statements are diametrically opposed to one another. You can't have one and the other. In the report, it mentions that Andy's spaces are 9 by 16. Well, those are actually the painted lines, because the width of Andy's is almost 70 feet across. So he is 8 feet wider than you all even require. So if he were to actually paint a couple extra feet on the end of his spaces, he would have the width, or the depth out, not the width. And particularly in his case, because he has so much more maneuvering space because his drive aisles are so wide, that he's not going to have a situation there at all that's a problem. And with, one other thing I neglected to say is, when you reduce the amount of paved area, your BMP, which basically collects the water, can be smaller as well. And you know, when you ride down the bypass road and you look on either side of the highway, you see seas of asphalt. And there are certain properties, one in particular that I can't help but not mention. About the 7 Mile Post, there is a Kmart that has hundreds of spaces that literally are never used. And there's considerable runoff generated because of that. I think that it's prudent that the 9 by 18 or 9 by 20 basically is what is used in, like I say, just about every jurisdiction I've ever served in. I will tell you that I had one company that I worked for that asked me for a larger parking space, and that was Harris Teeter. And Harris Teeter wanted a 9.5 space. But in 35 years, they were the only people that asked for anything larger. And so, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, sir. Anything further, Andy? All right. Mr. Demers?
Mayor and Commissioners, I want to speak on behalf of the Planning Board. Mr. Edwards was unable to stay for this afternoon. He wanted to speak, so he asked me to cover for him as best I could. First of all, the Planning Board had extensive deliberations on this topic, both aspects of the subject, particularly keeping in mind trying to be fair to business owners. not only Nags Head Pier, but also their competitors, and also to consider what's best in general for the population as a whole, as well as just the business. So we're trying to be business friendly and fair to all. As you've heard already at some length, there basically are two issues here. One, the size of the parking space or the stall. I want to mention that we didn't have complete consensus on either of the two issues. The first one being the parking stall size. The board was totally divided on that, voted only 4-3 to approve the decrease in the stall size. So that was kind of a toss-up. There were feelings either way. There was discussion of the Kmart issue, adequacy of spaces, and the various sizes of vehicles and that type of thing. So ultimately, it was decided probably as much on trying to support the local business as anything else, that since so many municipalities had gone to the 9-foot width, that since these spaces have been existing for so many years and are about 9 feet wide, that we would lean in that direction on the width. The second one was the number of spaces. Again, as has been mentioned, it was, I think, unanimously agreed by the planning board that that aspect of the code is outdated. The figure of one space for every 10 feet just no longer seemed to apply to the current conditions of the older fishing piers. So it was felt that we definitely need to update that part of the code. Secondly, that sentiment probably doesn't apply to the Jeanette's Pier because of the attraction there, the number of people, the deep water fishing capacity, and that type of thing. So the board did take a liking to the recommendation by the staff to separate the types of piers and update the code accordingly, so that the change from one space for every 10 feet to one space for every 20 feet made sense. But the other aspect of the code there, and there's really only two aspects here. One is length of pier, and the other is covered space. Currently, the code says that there will be one additional parking space for each 200 square feet of gross floor space area. Again, that seemed to be outdated because it doesn't say anything about how that floor space area is used. It can be just purely retail space, which kind of is the way the old fishing piers used to be, you know, renting equipment and getting tackle and that type of thing. But what's evolved is that the piers have changed their business model, and basically they have restaurant capability included in their pier house. And in fact, that ties directly to the intent of the Nags Head Pier is to enlarge their space for restaurant capability. Nonetheless, even though that is considered to be kind of outdated because it doesn't address the restaurant capability, the board as a whole felt that changing the parking requirement just based on the length of the pier was the right way to go and not address the restaurant capability. There was one dissenting vote, and that was me, and I failed to provide a dissenting opinion for the minutes. I apologize for that, but Mr. Edwards asked me to present the pros and the cons. The pros being that under the current situation, the length of the pier issue is outdated and should be updated, and that, again, would help the shorter piers. The con being that even though that does help, it does not address the restaurant capability. So if basically the basis for my dissenting vote was, we're updating part of the code, but not completely updating it. So we would be asking you to approve a new outdated code. I felt that to be appropriate as a text amendment to the code, that it should address basically all three aspects that's common to the piers, and that is the length of the pier for fishing, the retail space area, and the restaurant area. We had quite a bit of discussion in the board about the importance of that, and we put a priority on addressing this issue in what we are calling the stormwater/fill/parking space subcommittee that we have, and committed to putting this parking issue as a top priority of the parking phase of that committee work. And as Ms. Teague mentioned, we're having a meeting on Monday to get into that, and so we will be addressing this right away. So the situation here is the planning board does endorse the proposal, and at the same time, the subcommittee that will be dealing with the parking will be meeting on Monday and addressing this particular issue as its first priority, so it could be totally resolved more holistically in very short time frame. So that's kind of what we have brought forth to you. Be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions for Mr. Demers? Yes, Ms. Sadler.
Marvin, it appears to me that with this addition, which is not going to be heated and cooled space, in other words, is not considered, as we do in houses, heated space. If the text amendment just pertaining to the length of the pier was passed, that he would actually be in compliance with the necessary parking spaces. Is that your understanding as part of the planning board?
As far as the number of spaces, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have one.
Yes, Ms. Walters.
When you reduce the ratio from 10 feet for one space to 20 feet per one space, I mean, was there not like a 15 feet discussion per one space, or why such a broad spread?
There wasn't a lot of discussion as to what the possibilities were. The evidence seemed so overwhelming as to the few numbers of fishermen on those piers in the current time frame that the significant difference seemed to make a lot of sense. In fact, Mr. McCann particularly laid out, not only did he have the total number of fishermen per day, but he was able to break down during the time of the day how those numbers change over time with your early morning crowd and your afternoon crowd and then the evening crowd, and how few people by and large are on the fishing pier at any given time, that the numbers of spaces currently required in the code is just way too large.
Any other questions?
I got one for staff.
Mayor?
And I don't know if anybody has the answer to this one, but did anybody actually measure the water depth at the end of these piers?
Which end? Which end?
The end.
Oh, the end, the deep end?
We've gone from 16 feet, 16 to 20 feet at the end of the pier to about 8 to 10 now, 8 to 12, depending on which way the wind blows. Get the beach earth, we'll be about
I wish we could.
Mr. McCann, if you'll just approach the podium so we can pick up your comments, please.
I don't know if it has any bearing or not, but the Nags Head Fishing Pier was built with a restaurant in it. Originally, it had they weren't really restaurants, they were grills with bar stools and everything else. And of course, when Ash Wednesday hit and took everything out of that one, they put it back, and they put a big game room in it where the restaurant is now. And then eventually it got in, Joe Justice made it into a restaurant.
I remember that.
But it had always had a restaurant there. And of course, it was built in 1947, 57, and a few other 62.
Thank you. All right, does anybody else wish to comment on this proposed text amendment? Anyone else? Any other information from staff needed by the board? Oh, yes, Ms. Teague, if you have something else to add?
I did want to just add one thing, because I don't want the record to show anything different. People still catch fish off of our local piers.
Thank you for that plug. Does the board wish to receive any further information? Otherwise, we will now conclude the public hearing, and the board may begin its deliberations on this proposed text amendment.
Mayor, I'm prepared to make one motion. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the proposed text amendment to reduce the parking standard for fishing piers with regard to pier length from 1 space per linear feet of pier to 1 space per 20 feet of linear pier for piers less than 800 feet in length.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Further discussion. Would y'all consider anything that left out the 800 feet piece?
Not at this time.
Later maybe, Bob, but not now.
Good enough.
Not until I see some of the future.
The next beach nourishment.
I understand where you're going, but I already see one that's already doesn't have enough spaces, and I just soon not go with there right now.
And they don't have enough spaces. I mean, Nez Pier does not have enough spaces.
But they're not going to take spaces out, I guess is my point. If what's there is there, they're not going to reduce the number of spaces.
No, they would add more.
And it feels like, I don't know.
It's a great facility, and I understand what you're saying, but this board has committed itself somewhat to small business. And as I said this morning, we have to walk the walk.
And just to add to that, I will say that we did help Jeanette's Pier a lot.
Financially as well.
That might be an understatement.
Yeah, well, then a heck of a lot.
At the same time, while we support small business, I don't see us being able to discriminate based on who owns which pier, whether it's the state or anybody else.
I think in all honesty, Mayor, it's not really who owns, I mean, if the state owned all 3 piers, it is what has happened to the aged piers. They do not have the water under them to attract the fishermen. And they don't any longer, due to storms, have the length to attract the fishermen. They both have lost fishermen. And as I said before, they have had the smarts to come up with an idea of how to stay in business. So this pertains to a certain situation that perhaps our other pier is not experiencing, which is a good thing, that we have this deep water pier. So I don't feel that we are, I feel that we are helping businesses that are in need of a helping hand.
Further discussion?
I would just like to say that I can support the motion, because I feel like we've had a beach road committee. We really want to help our beach road businesses. We've tried to do that in various ways, whether it was being able to park on a contiguous lot without having to, combine the lots. We've made other adjustments because those businesses are older. They were built for a different time, and we're trying to help them adapt. And I think that's what we're trying to do here. help them adapt so that we don't lose them, because they are part of our heritage, they're part of our history, they're part of one of the reasons why people still come here. So because of that, I can support this.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm good. There's nothing else I can add.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Mayor, one more. On the next one, I'd like to make a motion to table the change in the parking stall. That's the motion.
I second that motion.
And now I'll give the explanation. Until the town considers it holistically, because I think we need to look at it town-wide. I don't necessarily object to it, but I'd like to have staff take a look, as well as compact cars, and how we revamp something that's going to impact the entire town, not just one section of town. And I think it may be time to update. We've talked about changing our parking standards, but I'd like to take a holistic approach to it, not a piecemeal approach.
Yes, ma'am.
In following up on what Renee has said, I've had a number of people who do not drive compact cars. When I've mentioned that this was coming up, or they once saw it on the, anyway, I would like for the public somehow to know, Cliff, when the planning board does come up with their discussions, whether they have one meeting or two, or before they present their recommendation to this board, because I do think there's some people out in the audience that would like to come. There are a number of things that need to be considered if we are going to revamp our parking town-wide, and I think some of those things, maybe staff, you can't think of everything, but, if you have a lot of people that can kind of pour on you different ideas, the compact car parking percentage is definitely one of them that needs to be considered. And I know the gentleman, I appreciate him talking about the stormwater, but I'm not so sure that if you decrease the amount of parking that you require, that the building won't become larger, and you've eliminated that runoff. And I will say this, I hope Tanger Outlet Mall does not decrease their parking, because I would hate to be down there trying to find a space on a Friday, rainy day. They could use Kmart's parking. And Kmart's parking is the next town's problem up the road, or lack of, whatever.
Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to table, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously. And that's all for public hearings today.
No.
Sorry. We'll try and line up a couple more next time.
Just thank.
Reports and recommendations from the Planning Board and the Planning and Development Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, everyone, for your deliberations. That was very helpful, I think, for all of us. Today, I have two things really to bring to you. The first is real brief. I wanted to point out this magnet. It says, "Be Water Wise." This is the latest public information tool of our Septic Health Initiative. The magnets just came in this week, so we wanted to get them to you first. They actually came in yesterday. There's a stack of them in the back. We'd encourage people to take one. If you have rental houses, take more than one and put them on your refrigerator. It's just some tools for septic health. And people who've come to visit our community from out of town don't always realize that they're on septic systems. So it's just some basics that everyone should know in terms of good septic maintenance practices. We have boxes of these in the department, and our intent is to deliver them to all the property managers throughout town. And those of you in the real estate business will be asking you for your help with that later on. Secondly, I wanted to update you on the land use plan amendments that were discussed at your last meeting. Attached to your packet, you will see a draft resolution that includes amendments to your land use plan, as well as a draft ordinance to prohibit sandbags eastward or oceanward of the static line of vegetation. These are going to be going to the planning board at their June meeting coming up. And what we need from you now is, pending the planning board's discussion, we actually need to go ahead and set a public hearing. There's a time frame, which I mentioned to you earlier, and you can see we've provided you 2 options in your packet that we have to comply with in order to meet CAMA requirements. You have an option from this point forward, in order to meet a 30-day public notice requirement. The earliest that we can hold a public hearing on these would be your mid-month, what would traditionally be the mid-month in July. I understand that this might not be desirable for the board, and if that's the case, then August, your August regular meeting would be your next option. So for right now, these draft texts that have been included are just there for your review. We want your feedback on them. We'll be discussing them with the planning board. We're also in contact with our CAMA representative, Charlene Owens. She's already taken a first look at them and offered us some suggestions. So these will change over time, but we wanted to go ahead and draft them and get them out to you. But in the meantime, what we really want to pin down right now is the date of the public hearing, so that we can give notice. I have nothing further, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Any questions for Liz? Yeah, no?
No, I'd just like to make a motion that we do it August 7. Not good?
Is there a reason not to do it at mid-month? Well, there's a motion on the floor, sorry. Is there a second for? Second.
Okay.
Further discussion, is there a reason not to do it
Yeah,
on
I
July
think we
17th?
usually don't have a mid-month meeting in July.
Were you proposing July or mid-month August?
I was talking, it has to be either mid-month July or the first meeting in August. And I
No,
don't think we usually have a mid-month meeting in July.
We can actually have the hearing in August and still meet the CRC deadline for consideration at the September meeting. What the August date gives us, though, is a tight time frame to incorporate any changes that might come out of the public hearing in those amendments that you have with the land use plan.
Well, while we're still in a discussion on my motion, why would we not have a public hearing for the first meeting in July?
Because we are required to give 30 days' notice, and we couldn't call for that public hearing today and meet that 30-day requirement.
Let's do it August 7th.
And I believe CRC meets here in September.
That is correct.
That'll be fine.
May I ask if we have anything on, I mean, what's in the pipe? What do you see for mid-July?
No.
And
That
it's
would be the only
not, it's
purpose.
not 30 days to July 3rd?
From today?
28, didn't it?
No, because we'd have to get the notice out starting tomorrow.
Oh, okay. I feel like this is an important piece for us, and the more time we give ourselves to get it done, I think we'll be better off. I think there are a lot of timing things fighting against us, and if we miss the deadline for that next CRC meeting, the next one's not for another quarter, and who knows if it'll be there or not.
Well, Mayor, we've had this sandbag issue since I came on the board 12 years ago. I mean, so if we don't meet this deadline, I mean, Elizabeth, I want to hear the really bad things that would happen should we, I mean, all of a sudden we're on a deadline. What would happen?
What would happen at the public hearing is if, based on some comment you received, you wanted to make some significant changes to the text that you were dealing with at that time. We would have to have a quick turnaround, and we would have to have those changes approved, reviewed, and sort of approved by CAMA staff prior to it getting into the packet for the CRC meeting in September. So we'd actually only have a few days to get that done. By having an earlier meeting, you give us more time after the hearing to work with CAMA staff and bring something back to you if needed.
And Commissioner Sadler, all I'm saying is I don't mind having a meeting in mid-month July to address this. I don't think it would be a particularly long meeting, but I do feel like it's, the major thing that could happen is you could have a storm. And then it becomes very relevant.
If we have a mid-month July meeting, can it be at 7:30 instead of 7?
I'm sure we could
Because
set
it's
that.
busy.
That suits everybody.
I can meet mid-month, and I agree. I mean, we can control what we do, but we can't control what CAMA does. So I think the sooner we can get it to them, the
Well, I mean, you can either call a question or get an amendment, get an amendment.
The other part that played into mine is it took years to review our last land use plan.
Awful.
I know this is just a small amendment, but I just don't trust their time frame more than I don't trust our time frame.
Well, I see your point there.
Very frustrating. Slow.
Well, let's call the question. All those in favor of the motion to have this public hearing on August 7th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Nay.
Nay.
Okay, I think I heard 3-2. Is that, okay. The motion fails. Anybody care to make another motion?
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we have it at a mid-month meeting, July 17th, that the mid-month meeting starting at 7:30.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Elizabeth.
I'll be glad when you be the head of the CRC.
Committee reports. Mayor Pro Tem, any committees?
No merit on a thing.
What?
Committees, y'all? Anything to report?
Are you just calling for committees or comments?
Just committees.
Committees?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll pass.
We did have a brief Colony Ridge committee meeting and reviewed a set of conceptual plans that had been given to the planning board previously when they were looking at lot coverage changes. And so they gave those to the Colony Ridge committee. We reviewed, commented, and we actually had I guess she's the building person, Danny Kennedy, who's an employee of Colony Ridge, and she was very helpful in answering questions, very forthcoming with information. It was really quite pleasant.
Very much.
And so they are going to give us the elevations and the floor plan as they submit those to the state. So that will be the next call for that committee. And hopefully we'll get some work moving faster.
But we're not holding them up.
No.
Thank you.
And if I could just add to that, Mayor, David Ryan and I met with Jay Overton with Albemarle and Associates, who's doing all the site work, and we asked again, will you be under 20% lot coverage? And his answer was yes, so
That's great.
we're holding them hopefully to that.
Okay.
Item number 2 under new business, consideration of amendment to the Town Code, Chapter 12, Businesses and Licensing, to authorize write-off of old business licensing debt.
Thank you. This, the staff is asking for the board to adopt an amendment to the business license ordinance. This is very similar to what is done presently for writing off the ad valorem and delinquent water accounts. You can do both of those by general statute. There was no provision in the general statute for writing off delinquent business licenses. However, the guidance we're getting from the school government says is we can come up with our own, and it's defendable. So in order to write these off, we need an adoption to that ordinance. It's a large amount because we haven't written them off since 2003. What we're asking you to write off is from 2003 to 2010 because Becky can continue to collect as much through all her avenues as much as she can yearly. We think from this point forward it's something we'll ask you to do, maybe at the same time we ask you to write off the delinquent water, but that's only after Becky's done all she can to collect as much as possible. So the ordinance is in your packet, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Business license or privilege license? What do we label them? I just want to make sure we're labeling correctly.
Business license.
So do we have two different licenses? I don't know that I've ever
It's
paid
one and the
but
same. One, I may be using them interchangeably, but
Mine comes labeled as a privilege
it's
license. That's why-
privilege
That's why
license.
I'm asking that we make sure that it flows so that anybody
Absolutely.
looking at it.
we'll make sure we use the right verbiage there.
And is the process that the town uses, if somebody has had a privileged license or business license the year before, they are billed for that the next year?
Yes, and those went out Friday.
So it's not, people don't, when a new business comes into town, they make an application the first time.
Correct.
But after that, they're just billed automatically.
Correct.
And these automatic billings are the ones that, when somebody leaves town, we're not getting paid because they're not in town anymore.
That's right.
Okay.
Do we, because I got my bill last week, it's privilege license. Do we need to change, do we need to state that
In the ordinance,
privilege license invoice older than 3 years regarding a business that the town no longer, I mean, so that we are clear on this?
yes, ma'am.
Real clear. I don't think that changes it sufficiently, do you? Mr.
Doesn't change the
Clerk?
character of it, no,
Okay.
ma'am.
And we sure what the formal name is on the whole thing?
Do what?
Are we sure what the formal name is? Is it a privilege license?
Yes.
Or is it a business
It
license?
is. Mine does read privilege license.
Ours, now this is for, ours are for the real estate, right?
But I have to pay Nags Head to sell houses in Nags Head. Bob, you do too.
No, I don't. It's,
Connie will,
that's one of
Connie
the-
will tell you
that's
she
one of the
pays
state.
that.
That's one of the state ones.
No, I
though.
have the state too.
Uh-oh.
You mean you have, you mean have the free?
Further discussion?
Excuse us all. I just would like to make that little change to that ordinance. If you could just say a privilege license invoice or privilege, well, an invoice for a privilege license older than 3 years. How does that sound?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that okay?
How about business or privilege? In case there's any that have been billed as business, just want to make sure we.
Cover all our bases.
Yeah.
Okay, was that a motion?
Yes. Thank you.
Second?
Second. Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Leidy?
Yes, sir. I'd like to inform the board that we did have the oral arguments in the Sarasota appeal on May the 17th in Richmond before the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. We thought the arguments went very well. We were impressed with our panel. They asked a lot of questions. They asked more questions of the other side than they did us, which we hope is a good sign. But in any event, we're now waiting for a decision to be rendered, have no idea when we will get a decision from the Fourth Circuit. We expect it'll be sometime, maybe by the end of the summer, probably at the earliest, but it may not be quite that early. In addition to that, I would like to have the board go into closed session at the appropriate time in order to confer with the town's attorney regarding the Sarasota case, the Town versus Cherry case, and then the various pending condemnation actions that the town has brought against others in connection with the beach nourishment project.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ogden?
Yes, I asked David Ryan to come up and give an update on stormwater projects. Deja vu.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. I'd like to report that during the month of May, the town drainage infrastructure has performed extremely well. And I think that's primarily due to the lack of rainfall that we've had. So, that's always a positive sign. Just wanted to pass along a couple project updates. The Vista Colony groundwater lowering project, the study phase for that project has been completed here recently. The data is now being compiled by the hydrogeologist, and within the next several weeks, we should have a final report prepared by Ed Andrews and forwarded to the town to basically indicate the findings of that project. Preliminary indications have come back with some very positive results. So it looks like so far so good with that project. Additionally, in that same area, there was a submittal package that was forwarded to NCDOT for connectivity of the right-of-way drainage there at Barnes Street. I have tried to follow up with DOT to see where we are with that review. Have been unsuccessful with that, but we'll keep on pressing forward to see if we can't come to a resolution to try to establish that connectivity. And lastly, just wanted to go ahead and give you an update on the Moongate drainage proposal. Several weeks ago, myself, the mayor, the town manager, Malcolm Fearing from DOT, and also Mike Robinson, the engineer for Saga Construction, met to sit down and discuss the possibility of the town accepting maintenance responsibility for that drainage proposal in an effort to try to expedite that review and approval process with DOT. At this time, we have officially not heard back from DOT on that. I did see Malcolm Fearing yesterday. He indicated that he was going to meet with Jerry Jennings today and hopefully would try to get back to us as soon as possible with a word on that.
And in follow-up to that, Malcolm called earlier today, or right before our meeting started, and indicated that Jerry Jennings was going to be okay with putting that perforated pipe in the right-of-way. So I imagine we'll get formal notice on, well, we need to get formal notice on that, obviously, but it's a good indication anyway.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you for that. And that's all I had.
Yes, ma'am.
Cliff, I'd like to ask David to kind of just bring me up to date on that situation on the south side of Nags Head Acres, where we were waiting to see if we could put a pipe that would go over and then take that water out to, I think you were still waiting on DOT's approval there.
Right. It was basically a two-part proposal. The first part being establishing a culvert connection there at Barnes Street. And then the second part of that, to go ahead and connect Nags Head Acres with the existing drainage infrastructure there in Vista Colony. One's got to happen before the other. So
okay. So you're still, so the Barnes Street permission is backing up.
Correct. That's correct.
The rest of the story.
That's correct. So we'll do what we can in order to try to press forward with that and get a determination from DOT on that matter.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ask the fire chief to come up and let you know about the fireworks celebration. That'll be very close.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mayor, Board, here before you again to announce that we are planning to co-host with the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau and Nags Head Pier the annual July 4th fireworks. Very excited about that. It's traditionally the highlight of the summer for us. It's a wonderful community family event. People plan their vacations around it, and police and public works and fire and ocean rescue are currently holding some planning meetings, and we're putting things together. We've just about jumped over all those hurdles that we needed to. We've become pretty well practiced in this. I would like to take the opportunity to thank the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau for their funding, Andy and Lovey McCann for their co-hosting of the event, and all the staff of Nags Head Fishing Pier for their support. One of the last requirements that we have yet to satisfy is the Dare County Fire Marshal Fire Prevention Permit. An informational packet has gone to the Dare County Board for their review, and upon their receipt and approval, the Dare County Fire Marshal will hopefully write that permit, but I don't doubt that we'll be able to do that very quickly. So there's never been a problem with that in the past. Zambelli International will again host, or rather oversee the fireworks display. Brian Jackson is our pyrotechnician, and he's putting together a wonderful show for us with about 3,000 shell shots, and it's going to be a wonderful event and unlike no other. It should be about a 25-minute display. Posters have been printed out. and these are available at Nags Head Town Hall. If anybody in the business community would like to pick some up, they're there for them to display. And as we get closer toward the July 4th event, there'll be a social media blitz from our PIO on Twitter and Facebook, and I'm sure that we'll get, again, tens of thousands of people to attend again. So, happy to answer any questions you might have, and I'll give you an update at the next meeting.
The day before, if you're here.
Okay, sounds good.
You might be busy. And then the police chief has a couple announcements that I'd like for him to make.
Mayor, Board of Commissioners, just very quickly, about 2 months ago, I came before y'all seeking permission to apply for 2 non-matching grants from the Governor's Crime Commission. Each of these grants were worth $10,000. Y'all gave permission for us to apply. We did the application process, and this morning received the letters from the Governor's Crime Commission on both grants that both were funded. These are non-matching. No money has to be put up. The first one is for the weapons replacement. We're able to replace our sidearms, which are in the industry standard a couple years past due, so we're able to do that without using any town funds. And the second one is the audio, video our interview rooms to update our equipment in there to come into compliance with North Carolina General Statute to get us where we need to be as far as recording interviews, as well as several storage devices that will be upstairs in the IT department. Again, $10,000 for that as well. But we were very excited, and thank y'all for allowing us to apply for that. Thank you.
Congratulations.
You better keep that grant writer handy, Kevin. Apparently, they're good.
2 things I want to bring up down the road, but just go ahead and introduce these now that for a future agenda for your consideration. One's an ordinance that I feel like we need to get put in place that addresses boats stored on any property, but particularly at the Harvey site. We have some boats that have been stored there for quite some time now, and we can't find the original owner, and we just need to be able to adopt something that allows us to have those removed. So we can draft that up. I've asked other municipalities for some examples, and certainly after the attorney vets it, I'd like to bring that before you. The other is, I've had a request specifically for a consideration for refunds for prepaid water credit units. Of course, there's a long history on WCUs going back to the beginning of the Emmons-Dare when Village was created. So I'll be putting together that information for you and bringing that for your decision at your next meeting. So that's all I have, and thank you.
Thank you, sir. Board of Commissioners agenda? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Walters? Mr. Sadler?
I want to mention again that I too thank the Tourism Board for the generosity. Fireworks, I think again they awarded fireworks money for Avon, Manio, and Nags Head. And we just came from a ribbon cutting from the new playground park at Whalebone, and that's a great place. We don't have children small enough, but some of us may have grandchildren. It's very rewarding to hear the executive director say that since 1993, the communities of Dare County have received over $9 million to put back in the community through grants. Now, we know that a lot of that money that's for grants are for events to bring new people to the Outer Banks and, to help with the marathons and all of the events. But to see concrete left in the community from the Tourism Board grants is very good. And saying a neighbor thing, Susie and I, along with Cliff, saw a new neighbor move into town yesterday, the Outer Banks Relief Foundation. They are now in the former Dixon and Meekins construction, right there on our side of 8th Street. The building's beautiful. They've done a marvelous job. And through some generous support for that foundation, they're able to have a facility here. The other thing I wanted to tell you that, speaking of events, at the new event site, Windmill Point. The movies start tomorrow night at dusk, and they're going to be showing Hook. Is it Hook?
Friday night.
Friday night, I'm 70, okay. Tomorrow, daytime, starts the every Thursday arts fair. So I hope some of us will take advantage of that. And I have finished my long agenda. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, ma'am.
Only one thing, in reading the minutes of the planning board, and where we were talking about parking again, and it was talked about reducing parking would reduce impervious surface area and keep more green and open space. The only way that will occur is if you change lot coverage, because as everybody knows, everybody maxes out. So before everybody talks about thinking that reducing parking is going to reduce lot coverage and give us more green space, you have to take a look at the whole thing as a whole and look at the big picture. And if we really want more green space, then we have to take a look at it in a different way. And like I said earlier, I'm not opposed to reducing the size of the parking stalls, but that's not necessarily going to get everybody more green space.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good point.
I wanted to bring up the minutes from, I guess it was May 15, that were in the,
Let's see, where?
yeah, that were in the package.
F4.
It's the
Okay, got it.
the first May meeting and the mid-month May meeting. And my comment was at the mid-month May meeting.
Okay.
And I think there were just three of us here, but I do recall asking about consensus on the town taking over maintenance of the drainage improvements for Moongate that are in the right-of-way. And I just wanted to make sure that the minutes reflected that, especially since I sent a letter out last night that said that.
Well, I read them. So you're...
It was around in there, but it was...
Okay.
I wanted to be specific on it. And with that, I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes from both meetings as amended, if we could. Or I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from both meetings as amended.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Thank you very much. I wanted to clarify with the manager, the Harvey site. Now, that is open to the public?
Yes.
And kite surfers could go there?
They could.
Is that correct? Okay. We're having, it sounds like, some overcrowding at the access behind Jockey's Ridge. So I do want to make everybody aware that that is another possible location for kite surfing, and people are welcome to go there and park there. And
We're fighting the same thing we have in years past with the park closing at 7 o'clock. People that get there at 6 and know they're going to kite surf beyond 7 o'clock will park outside the gate. What the police chief has instructed his officers to tell people, to start letting them know that that's another site. The Windmill Point site, as well as the Harvey site, is another place that they can go to launch from. Windmill Point's been closed for some time now, but that's going to change tomorrow because of the art show opening back up, and the concern was trying to get that grass stabilized after spending that time and effort to get the fill stabilized. But both are public.
wonderful.
Mayor?
Yes,
Can
ma'am.
I ask a question as it relates to that? Years ago, the park behind Jockey's Ridge, we used to lock it at night. Is there no way to get the Parks, North Carolina Division of Parks, to agree to us to do that again instead of shutting it so early?
We've tried that, and we'll continue to try.
Have you tried it since the new administration's gone in?
Exactly what I was about to say. We haven't tried it since the new administration. But we will reinitiate those efforts to keep that park open longer, and we haven't spoken with the residents there, but we've questioned somewhat, is there a need to lock it? But
Well, they probably need to secure it. That's just the Park Service, I think.
State parks.
Yeah. But it seems to me that dusk is, they don't kiteboard in the dark that I've ever seen. And it just seems to me that 9 o'clock would be they could push that. The other thing I wanted to, Bob, on following up on your Windmill Point site, there are 2 or 3 boats there, are there
There
not?
are 3. There's
There are
one
3.
that's tied right up to the Harvey building that we're going to remove. And the other 2, we can remove them, but I'd like to have an
I know.
ordinance in order to do that.
And it seems to me that the last time you and I were down there, that once they're removed, the grass cutting that grass there would give more launching space near the water.
That's the issue with the kite boarders, is that it's very difficult to string your lines out in your kite, and that's what's so great about Jockey's Ridge. When you go further north, there's enough sand there, but we're working towards that.
And if there's any space still on the event site that needs to be protected, I know that we put that grass seed out there and putting the water on it so that it'll be stabilized hopefully by fall. Cliff, and there's some way we could string
Yes.
tape around the areas where we don't want, I mean, we really don't want helter-skelter parking.
That's right.
And I would assume that kiteboarders are going to park as close to the water as they can, but if there's an area down there that we need to preserve for the grass to grow, we just need to mark it. But there's space there. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Lastly, I do want to point out that with real estate broker privilege licenses, that counties, cities, and towns may not levy that license tax. So Anna, you're double paying.
Well, I have paid mine, because I get one's for $40 and one's for $50, and I've paid mine. Why did they send me the bill, Bob?
It's because you paid it the last time, Anna.
Well, I won't get it back either, I bet.
You can always ask. We had a request for a closed session.
Yes, sir.
John, if you will give me the
Yes,
statute
sir.
numbers.
Y'all need a motion to go into closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A6 for the purposes of discussing various litigation with the town attorney, including the Sansoda, Cherry, Fisher, and other town condemnation actions.
And I'm going to make that motion as described by Mr. Leidy.
Second.
We have a second. Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously, and we're going to enter a brief closed session. We're going to come back into open session. I'll ask our attorney, Mr. John Leidy, to report out from the closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The board did consult with the town attorney regarding the various litigation matters that they went into closed session to discuss, but no action was taken.
Thank you, sir. Y'all, we have 1 or 2 things that were potentially scheduled for the mid-month for June. They are things that can be deferred until that July meeting. So if it's all right with everybody, we'll not have a mid-June meeting, and we will have a mid-July meeting, and that mid-July meeting will start at 7:30.
You're expecting opposition?
No, sir, not really. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. We're adjourned.
So you keep saying 7:30.